Chapter 524. P.S. As promised, this chapter is to congratulate Jianghu for his promotion to the position of sect leader. I apologize and thank you for being late. The night was as cold as water. The autumn wind blew, bringing with it waves of coldness. At this time, the campsite of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's Western Army was ablaze, and it was as bright as day. Flames soared into the sky, lighting up the night sky of the wilderness. At this moment, the boundless silent wilderness seemed to have awakened ahead of time because of these balls of fire. When the army of Shanghai City attacked, most of the soldiers of the Western Army had fallen asleep after a day's journey. Except for the patrolling soldiers, it was an undefended campsite. It was as if even the heavens were helping Shanghai City. The bright moonlight and the brilliant starlight intertwined, illuminating the entire campsite as if it were daytime. Perhaps this was the manifestation of fate, which affected the movement of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Since defeating Qiu's army, Ouyang Shua's fate had completely taken shape in the southwest area, and no one could rival it. As the saying went, the son of fate would be protected by God. Taking advantage of the bright night, the fierce Shanghai City army started a monstrous massacre in the campsite. At the same time, the two cavalry divisions following the Western Army finally completed their bait mission. They turned out in full strength and rushed toward the campsite of the Western Army. Faced with the attack of the two armies, it was only a matter of time before the Western Army was defeated. Shi Dakai looked at the chaotic camp, and for the first time, a feeling called despair flashed through his heart. The kingdom of heaven was doomed. The iron-blooded man looked up at the sky and sighed. He didn't want to give up, so he tried his best to organize the army and break out of the encirclement. As long as they successfully broke out of the encirclement in the direction of Tianjing City, they still had a chance of survival. Unfortunately, all of this was destined to be in vain. The army of Shanghai City was guarded by two divine generals, by Qi and Han Xian. Once they launched a surprise attack, they wouldn't give the Taiping army any time to breathe. Every battle line of the army was impenetrable. The various armies of Shanghai City cooperated with each other, advancing and retreating in an orderly manner. They launched continuous attacks, efficiently and quickly slaughtering the ignorant Taiping army. In every direction, in every corner, there was an army stationed. The camp of the Western Army was like a cage, trapping the army and preventing them from escaping. The battle cries reverberated in all directions and lingered for a long time. By the time Luo Shixin's and Zhang Liao's divisions arrived, the situation had basically been settled. Two elite cavalry divisions, borrowing the light of the fire, galloped unhindered through the camp. Unexpectedly, there was no one who could match them. Zhang Liao was in high spirits as he led his troops to kill the enemy. Just a few days ago, the army in front of them had pressured them to the point of suffocation. Unexpectedly, in just a few days, the roles of the two sides had completely changed. It was the Taiping army's turn to be slaughtered. Such a huge disparity was truly unbelievable. Zhang Liao could not help but sigh in his heart. In comparison, the army of Shanghai City was indeed extraordinary. The soldiers of the Taiping army had thought of escaping into the wilderness at night. Unfortunately, how could Han Xian allow them to succeed? Outside the camp, the two armies had arranged tens of thousands of archers to stand guard. Any soldier who dared to escape would be shot into a sieve before he could go far. In the face of such a rain of arrows, no matter how brave the soldiers were, they would stop at the sight of it. The only way to survive was to surrender. In the sky full of fire, finally, some soldiers could not stand it anymore and chose to surrender in humiliation. The soldiers knew very well that their army was the only hope of the heavenly kingdom. Now that their hope had been shattered and they could not even protect themselves, even if they were lucky enough to escape, they would not be able to escape the subsequent pursuit. The warship of the heavenly kingdom was already dilapidated and riddled with holes. It was about to sink completely. Instead of dying with the heavenly kingdom, it was better to take the opportunity to board a new warship. With this thought in mind, more and more soldiers surrendered as time went on. Like dominoes, the Taiping army surrendered in batches. In the later stage, if a general came forward to stop them, he would probably be immediately hacked to death by his own people. Seeing such a scene, even the most inflexible general did not dare to pretend to be someone who did not know what was good for him anymore. It was not until late at night that the inconspicuous hillside gradually calmed down. All the surrendered soldiers had their weapons taken away and were gathered together to be detained. The camp from before was instantly turned to one side, becoming a temporary prison cell. In just one night, the world had changed dramatically. The night was getting darker and darker. Even the starlight began to dim. The bustling wilderness regained its original silence. Of course, as long as they got through this dark night, dawn would not be far away. For the whole night, no one in the camp rested. The army of Shanghai City had to guard the prisoners of war, so they did not dare to sleep. As for the soldiers of the Taiping army, they could not calm down and could not sleep at all. More than 200,000 soldiers spent the most difficult 4 hours together in the endless night. At about 6 o'clock in the morning sun finally rose from the eastern sky again. With the red morning sun, the night completely dissipated. The night receded at a speed visible to the naked eye like a tide. Dawn finally came to the world again. It was not until then that Bai Qi and Han Xian had time to do the post-war statistic, and this calculation went on until noon. To be able to achieve such an efficient speed, it was all thanks to the professional staff officers in the army. In the end, even Bai Qi was shocked by the final statistic. In this battle, more than 40,000 of the 150,000 Taiping West Army soldiers died in battle and more than 90,000 were captured. In the end, less than 20,000 soldiers broke through the siege. Among the 4 main generals of the West Army, General Shi Dakai was sent away by his personal guards during the chaos. General Li Kaifang of the right died in battle. Deputy General Xiao Chaogui and General Feng Yunshan of the left were unfortunately captured. Because it was a night battle, the army of Shanghai City also suffered some losses, but they were not seriously injured. After dawn, Zhang Liao rested for a while and then left with his troops. Since the West Army had been defeated, the destruction of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was close at hand. They no longer needed their help. After all, Kunming County had just been pacified, and the army was still in the process of reorganization. As the newly appointed commander of the army, Zhang Liao naturally wanted to return as soon as possible. Fortunately, they were all soldiers, and they were in the army camp, so there was no need to be polite. After some small talk, the two sides said goodbye. Through this period of mutual help, the relationship between Shanghai City and Lingxi City became closer. Not only between the generals, but also between the soldiers began to recognize each other. The cavalry division led by Luo Shixin naturally officially returned to the army. Considering that the 2nd Division had been fighting continuously, the soldiers were already exhausted. Bai Qi finally decided that Luo Shixin's division would lead the troops to escort more than 90,000 prisoners of war to Mulan Fortress. Because it was still within the territory of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Bai Qi also arranged for the 5th Division to accompany them to prevent accidents. Luo Shixin was naturally unhappy to receive the order. He had wanted to go to Tianjin City to see for himself. Now it seemed that there was no such opportunity. However, military orders could not be disobeyed, so Luo Shixin could only nod in agreement. The remaining 3 divisions of the Dragon Xiang army would join hands with the Leopard army and officially set off for Tianjin City. Thus, the war that had lasted for more than a month was finally coming to an end. In the afternoon of November 16, Tianjin City. When Shi Dakai led the remnants of his troops and fled to Tianjin City in a sorry state, one could imagine the shock it caused. The news of the defeat of the West Road Army was like a tsunami that shook the entire Tianjin city to pieces. Despair spread throughout the battlefield. Panic was like a virus, spreading like lightning. The pessimistic mood instantly enveloped the sky above Tianjin city. It was reported that when the commander of the West Road Army, Shi Dakai, entered the palace to pay his respects to the Heavenly King, he wanted to commit suicide on the spot. If the guards in the main hall had not been a step faster, Shi Dakai would probably have died on the spot. Seeing this, how could Hong Xiuquan bear to reprimand this general? Especially with the defeat of the West Road Army, the originally bright Taiping army had become dim. If Shi Dakai died as well, they would really be in a situation where they would not have any generals to use. Moreover, Hong Xiuquan was very clear that he had to bear part of the responsibility for the defeat of the West Road Army. To think that Hong Xiuquan had claimed to know the heavenly state like the back of his hand. He did not expect that Shanghai City would play a trick on him right under his nose. The humiliation was not something that outsiders could understand. The two of them secretly discussed for a full 2 hours. Outsiders had no way of knowing what exactly they talked about. They only knew that after Shi Dakai left the Heavenly King Palace, he did not even return home. Instead, he went straight back to the army camp to reorganize the army, pack up their luggage, and gather supplies. Those with a keen sense of smell would probably be able to guess that the Heavenly King was going to abandon the city and flee. Indeed, in the face of such a great defeat, Hong Xiuquan no longer had the confidence to defend Tianjin. If that was the case, it would be better for him to cut his losses and abandon the city as soon as possible. The direction in which he fled was naturally Guilin County in the north. Of the 3 counties of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Xuanzhou County had already fallen by more than half. Zhenan County in the west, because it was close to Kunming County in Yunnan Province, was no longer safe. The only choice was to retreat to Guilin County. Although Ouyang Shuo had already led his troops to take down 2 passes, Hong Xiuquan had after all managed Xuanzhou County for nearly a year. He still had a way to break through the blockade of Shanghai City's army. Moreover, with the nearly 20,000 remnants of Shi Dakai's troops, Hong Xiuquan could mobilize more than 100,000 soldiers. This was also a military force that could not be underestimated. Even if they forcibly attacked the passes, they still had some chance of success. Shi Dakai's unusual actions immediately caused an even greater uproar in Tianjin. In an instant, rumors spread throughout the city, and it looked like the city was about to go completely out of control. Helpless, Hong Xiuquan could only impose a curfew and mobilize the army to enforce military control. To be continued. Chapter 525. November 16th, night, Tianjin City. As a large number of troops walked onto the streets, the noisy Tianjin City instantly quietened down. Although the city was no longer noisy, the fear in the hearts of the commoners was even greater. In a chaotic world, the weak were always the most helpless and would always be in a dominant position. East of the city, Yang Xiuqing's mansion. Within the huge whirlpool, Yang Xiuqing, who was under house arrest, seemed to be uninvolved, but in reality, that was not the case. There were 2 big whirlpools in Tianjin City. Yang Xiuqing was at the center of one of the whirlpools. Although he was under house arrest, many people in Tianjin City had placed their chips on Yang Xiuqing. In addition to Yang Xiuqing's huge influence in the heavenly state, there were also the contributions of the Military Intelligence Department and the Black Snake Guards, the 2 major intelligence organizations. After working hard in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom for nearly a year and receiving abundant financial support, both Cobra, the director of the Military Intelligence Bureau, and Black Snake, the commander of the Black Snake Guards, had invested a small part of their energy in this area. Many of the civil and military officials in the city kept in touch with them. Of course, regardless of whether it was the military intelligence or the Black Snake Guard, they all used their identities as great merchants when dealing with them. Now it was time to reap the harvest. Previously, when the Dragon Soaring Legion and Leopard Legion were able to silently avoid Hong Xiuquan's eyes, they had played a part in it. This big show in Tianjing City was the end-of-year test for the two intelligence agencies. General, I've just received top-secret information. The Heavenly King will eliminate you before he leaves Tianjing tomorrow. The one who spoke was a soldier from the Military Intelligence Department who had been hiding beside Yang Xiuqing. Yang Xiuqing, who was sitting opposite him, was still expressionless, but a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes. Tempestuous waves had actually arisen in his heart. On one hand, he was terrified of Hong Xiuquan's ruthlessness, and in the end, Hong Xiuquan was still unwilling to let him live. Secondly, he was fearful of the intelligence of the Jun family's intelligence bureau. To be able to obtain news of the Sky Emperor Palace in time, just this alone was enough to make Yang Xiuqing look at him in a different light. One had to know that Hong Xiuquan's guard against the Sky Emperor Palace had almost reached an extreme level. Even a general like Yang Xiuqing didn't know much about the affairs of the palace. Once the palace maids, eunuchs, and other internal affairs personnel were found to have colluded with external officials, they would immediately be put to death. Even so, they were still unable to stop the infiltration of Shanghai City. General, it's time to end this. Seeing that Yang Xiuqing was still a little hesitant, the soldier had no choice but to emphasize his tone. Once Hong Xiuquan left Tianjing City, they would not be able to answer to the Marquis. Therefore, no matter what, they had to act tonight and do their best to prevent the evacuation tomorrow. Silence, deathly silence. At this moment, even the air seemed to freeze. Only the people involved knew what kind of stormy waves and bloody storms would be stirred up by the so-called ending. Once this step was taken, there was no turning back. After a long while, Yang Xiuqing nodded and said in a deep voice, "Since he is heartless, then don't blame me for being unjust." After saying these words, all the hesitation and apprehension in his heart vanished like smoke in thin air. Yang Xiuqing knew very well that ever since he agreed to the conditions of the person in front of him that night, he no longer had a way out. The distance between him and the kingdom of heaven was already getting further and further, and there was no turning back. Betrayal was never an easy thing to do in this regime that was founded on religious sections. Because once he betrayed, he would not only betray the heavenly king Hong Xiuquan, but also his previous belief. The feeling of his beliefs collapsing was even worse than the feeling of being stabbed by a blade or stick. Fine, let all this pain end tonight. Hong Xiuquan slowly closed his eyes, unwilling to say another word. Seeing this, the soldier did not say anything, stood up, and left. Next, it was their turn to go on stage. In the city, the Emperor Palace. The majestic Emperor Palace stood in the center of Tianjing City, stretching for dozens of li. There were thousands of pavilions and tens of thousands of palaces, and it was filled with endless wealth and beauty, giving it the air of a heavenly family. Compared to Ouyang Shua's protectorate of the southern border, which had been expanded several times, it was probably even better. On normal days, the Sky Emperor Palace was completely silent at night. The thousands of palace maids, eunuchs, and guards in the palace did not dare to make the slightest noise. Tonight was clearly different. According to the Heavenly King's orders, the palace was bustling and noisy. The palace maids and eunuchs were busy packing up the valuables in the palace and sending them to the carriages. Just the personal belongings of the Heavenly King alone were packed into 10 large carriages. In addition, there were the personal belongings of the concubines, antiques, paintings, gold, silver, jewelry, porcelain, silk, and all kinds of ornaments. The hundreds of carriages were about to be loaded up. It was already late at night, and the light shone on the Emperor Palace, giving off an indescribable sense of irony. Hong Xiuquan, who was mentally and physically exhausted, dragged his weary body and slowly walked into the bedchamber. Hong Xiuquan's previous high spirits were instantly pulled away from his body, becoming empty. The empire's hegemony was gone in an instant. In the span of a night, Hong Xiuquan seemed to have aged more than 10 years. Wrinkles appeared on his forehead, and even his hair was beginning to turn white. This was the feeling of a dead man's heart. Hong Xiuquan knew that even if he retreated to Guilin County, he would only be able to live in peace for a while. In the vast wilderness, there was no longer a place or stage for him. For Hong Xiuquan, who had been reborn, the blow was too great. It was so great that he could not bear it. As the saying goes, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Hong Xiuquan's current mood was the best portrayal of falling from the sky. Only because of this, he hated Yang Xiuqing to the bone. Even if he had to retreat, he was not willing to let Yang Xiuqing live in peace. He had to get rid of her, because in Hong Xiuquan's understanding, it was the defeat of the Southern Army that triggered the chain reaction in Heavenly State. He had never reflected on what would have happened in Heavenly State if he had listened to Yang Xiuqing's suggestion and retreated from the Mulan fortress. At the very least, he would not have ended up in such a state. In the end, Hong Xiuquan still had a knot in his heart. The debt of sin from his previous life still haunted him in this life, making him unable to feel at ease. From time to time, Hong Xiuquan would worry that when he woke up one night, Heavenly State would change dramatically. Yang Xiuqing would lead hundreds of thousands of troops and suddenly turn the spear to kill him in the palace and replace him. To be honest, being able to tolerate Yang Xiuqing's command until now was the result of Hong Xiuquan repeatedly overcoming his inner demons. With such a breadth of mind, how could he be qualified to lead a regime and stand in the wilderness? With such a heavenly king, the defeat of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was only a matter of time. When Hong Xiuquan walked into the bedroom, he found that it was not concubine Xiao who was serving him tonight, but concubine Chen who should not be here. Not only did he frown, but his face was already filled with anger. After appearing in the wilderness, Hong Xiuquan married 10 concubines. Hong Xiuquan did not completely forget his character in his previous life. He specially made a schedule, and every day, there would be a fixed concubine waiting for him to go to bed. Therefore, Hong Xiuquan had a clear idea of who was serving him every day. "Why is it you? Where is concubine Xiao?" Hong Xiuquan stared at the delicate concubine Chen. There was not a trace of warmth in his eyes, but an indescribable coldness. In his eyes, the role of women was nothing more than reproduction and a tool to satisfy his lust. Even to his concubines, Hong Xiuquan did not really treat them as human beings. Although they were called concubines, in fact, their status was not much different from that of palace maids. As an ancient scholar, although Hong Xiuquan failed many times and later founded the god-worshipping society according to the teachings of the West, he still inherited the stubbornness and bad habits of pedantic scholars. Concubine Chen did not dare to show a trace of disrespect and carefully replied, reporting to the heavenly king, "Concubine Xiao fell ill during the day, and the empress arranged for me to serve the heavenly king. Is that so?" Hearing this, Hong Xiuquan's expression slightly relaxed. Even so, he still arranged for someone to go to concubine Zhao's place to confirm. Hong Xiuquan was not worried about anything else, but he could not tolerate the concubines in the harem playing tricks to gain extra favor from him. In fact, he did not have to do this. Which concubine was not trembling with fear when it was their turn to serve the heavenly king? How could they have the mood to play tricks and compete for favor with each other? Hong Xiuquan was really interesting. Even if he was reborn, he still unconsciously thought that he was the center of the people. He was the god of the people, the heaven of the concubines, and the ruler of the fate of all mortals. Rest. In such a situation, Hong Xiuquan naturally did not have any interest. After asking concubine Chen to help him change his clothes, he prepared to go to sleep. Yes. Concubine Chen's worried heart finally relaxed. After a while, the candlelight faded, and the heavenly king's bedroom fell into darkness. The surroundings of the entire palace fell into absolute silence when they saw this. Even the palace maids and eunuchs who were still sorting out items had to take a detour. Concubine Chen, who was sleeping next to Hong Xiuquan, did not fall asleep, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. This woman, in addition to her identity as a concubine, had another secret identity. She was the highest-level secret agent that the Black Snake Guards had placed beside Hong Xiuquan. She was also the top existence among the Snake Guard. Among the Snake Guards, there was a special type of secret agent called the Death Guard. Every Death Guard was only responsible for one mission in their life. This was because the missions they were responsible for were all very dangerous, and once they were completed, they would basically die. If they were lucky enough to survive, the Black Snake Guards would also arrange for them to retire and live a comfortable life. In order to let Concubine Chen be chosen by Hong Xiuquan without a trace and be accepted into the palace, the Black Snake Guards had put in a lot of effort. It could be said that Concubine Chen, this chess piece, was the core existence that the Black Snake Guards had placed in Tianjing City. After several times, several Snake Guards had been replaced, and they finally succeeded when it was Concubine Chen's turn. It was also because of this that the Black Snake Guards had the confidence to set off huge waves in Tianjing City. To be continued. Chapter 526. Of course, the Black Snake Guards' arrangements in the Emperor Palace were naturally not limited to Chun Fei alone, because no one could guarantee when they would need to use Chun Fei as their trump card. The only method was to ensure that once the time was ripe, no matter who it was that night, the Black Snake Guards would have a way to make the person who served them become Chun Fei and achieve their goal. The operations involved were enough to dazzle one's eyes. Unknowingly, it was already late at night. Chun Fei's eyes became brighter and brighter, with a hint of death in them. She gently put her right hand into her mouth and slightly tilted it, revealing a white tooth. Upon closer inspection, the tooth turned out to be a fake tooth. It was hollow inside with a tiny wax pellet hidden inside. The bean-sized wax pellet was naturally formed, and there was not a single crack on its surface. In order to avoid the strict search in the palace, the Black Snake Guards had put in a lot of effort. Chun Fei carefully took out the wax pill and squeezed it hard. The wax pill immediately burst. Suddenly, a thin wisp of green smoke floated out of the wax ball. Wisps of green smoke were immediately sucked into Chun Fei and Hong Xiuquan's body. This green smoke was the world's strange poison that the mountain barbarians had offered to Ouyang Shua. It was called smoky miasma, and it was extremely rare. Only in the depths of the mountains and forests, where miasma filled the air, and beside the deep ponds and ancient trees, could one find a trace of it. Then, he used a secret technique to seal it with a natural wax pellet. When poisoning someone, there was no need to use any medium. One only needed to pinch open the wax pellet. If an ordinary person breathed in a trace of the smoky net barrier, they would definitely be poisoned to death in less than an hour. Thus, even if it was the mountain barbarians, if they wanted to gather a trace of a smoky barrier, they often had to pay an extremely great sacrifice. Basically, there were very few people who survived. However, such a strange poison, once it was produced, if it wasn't collected within 10 minutes, it would merge back into the pool and disappear. Thus, if one wanted to gather a smoky barrier, luck and sacrifice were both indispensable. Such harsh conditions were also part of the natural order. Otherwise, if a large number of smoky barriers were to emerge into the world, then wouldn't it cause all living beings to be plunged into misery and suffering? After all, the strength of the smoky barrier lay in its poisonous gas. It was soundless and could kill people without leaving a trace. It wasn't like arsenic, helianthus, and other poisons that required blood and other mediums to be effective. In ancient times there were no gas masks. Therefore, the person who poisoned it could be poisoned to death if he was not careful. Chun Fei had never expected to walk out of the Emperor Palace alive. The poignant smoky net miasma drifted over, and the two of them were immediately poisoned. As for Hong Xiuquan, he was still sleeping soundly, completely unaware of this. Perhaps, to Hong Xiuquan, this kind of death was already a blessing. The only one who suffered was Chen Fei. After inhaling the smoky miasma, Chen Fei could only close her eyes and wait for death. The most beautiful flowers always wither in the most beautiful years. The next morning, that day when the palace maids entered the Heavenly King's bedroom to help the Heavenly King and consort Chen wash up, they saw the two corpses lying on the ground. Smoky mist. Its name was beautiful, and so was its effect. Those who were poisoned did not show any abnormalities on their bodies. It was as if they were in eternal slumber. In an instant, the news of the Heavenly King's sudden death spread throughout Tianjing City. In an instant, the entire city was shaken. The civil and military officials who had stayed up all night to pack their luggage and prepare to leave Tianjing City with the Heavenly King were all stunned when they heard the news. A sudden storm engulfed the entire Tianjing City. Everyone was at a loss as to where the fate of Heavenly State would lead. 9 in the morning, the Emperor Palace's main hall. No matter what, since it had already happened, the civil and military officials naturally had to discuss how to solve it. Because the Empress of Heavenly State was basically a decoration. Therefore, the ones who truly held the real power were the civil and military officials in the hall. It was them who would decide the future of Heavenly State. The military officials were naturally led by Shi Dakai. The head of the civil officials was a historical talent. This person was Su Zhe. Su Zhe, courtesy name Zio, was a northern songwriter, poet, and deputy prime minister. He was one of the 8 great scholars of Tang and Song. Along with his father Su Sun and brother Su Shi, they were known as the Three Sus. Hong Xiuquan appeared in the wilderness. Apart from Yang Xiuqing, he did not have any qualified internal affairs talent. But Hong Xiuquan did not dare let Yang Xiuqing interfere in government affairs. The only way was to put outsiders in important positions, and Su Zhe was the talent that Hong Xiuquan had subdued when he was destroying the territories of other players. Apart from Su Zhe, there were 2 other historical officials in Heavenly State. However, they were not well known and were not mentioned. Logically speaking, when the Heavenly King suddenly died, the first thing to do was to decide on a successor. However, Hong Xiuquan had appeared in the wilderness for less than a year, so he did not leave behind any heirs. Moreover, Heavenly State was in a precarious situation. Even if there were children, they would not be able to take on such a great responsibility. Therefore, the officials' opinion was naturally to choose someone from among the old officials, especially those who had appeared with the Heavenly King in the wilderness, to take over the Heavenly King's position and continue his unfinished business. And the most important thing now was naturally to lead everyone out of the crisis of destruction. The first person to be recommended was, unsurprisingly, Shi Dakai. Shi Dakai was a senior elder of Heavenly State and a military official who held military power. In these troubled times, he was naturally the most powerful competitor. And last night, the Heavenly King had summoned Shi Dakai alone. It was clear that he was being given preferential treatment. Logically speaking, there was indeed no one who could compete with Shi Dakai. As for Shi Dakai himself, because of yesterday's great defeat, his mind was unsettled and he did not say a word in court. Shi Dakai's silence was naturally interpreted by others as tacit agreement. At this moment, a tall and thin official stepped out from the crowd and said loudly, "General Shi is naturally one of the suitable candidates, but I believe there is someone more suitable than General Shi." What a joke! Is there anyone more experienced than General Shi in Heavenly State? Shi Dakai's supporters immediately retorted, their expressions arrogant. Of course there is. The official said unhurriedly, "General Yang Xiuqing, whether in terms of experience or ability, I'm afraid she is superior to General Shi." Needless to say, this official was naturally the backbone of Yang Xiuqing's camp. Last night, after Yang Xiuqing had sent off the soldiers of the military intelligence department, she had begun contacting the officials to discuss the coup. Originally, these allies had still held some doubt. After all, Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan's prestige was still extremely high. Not many people had the confidence to challenge the authority of the Heavenly King. But this morning, news of the Heavenly King's sudden death had suddenly spread throughout the city. When these allies received the news, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. If there was no connection between the two, they wouldn't believe it even if you beat them to death. In that instant they made their own decisions. At this time, they naturally had to wave the flag and cheer for Yang Xiuqing in court. Haha, what a joke! The one who retorted was still the same official from before. He said with a sneer, "A defeated general, and someone imprisoned by the Heavenly King at that. What right does he have to inherit the throne?" "Is that so?" The tall and thin official's words were filled with an indescribable meaning. He said faintly, "If I remember correctly, General Shi is also a defeated general. And once he was defeated, he buried the fate of Heavenly State." The entire hall suddenly fell silent. Shi Dakai's expression suddenly became incomparably ashamed. A wave of shame spread through his entire body. If it weren't for the person next to him holding him back, he would have turned and left. How can this be the same? Shi Dakai's supporters were also speechless. Even they themselves didn't have the confidence to say what they had just heard. How is it different? The tall and thin official, on the other hand, followed up with another attack. He said loudly, "General Yang was ordered to attack Fort Mulan, and it was a tough battle. Moreover, General Yang had proposed to withdraw the army, but he didn't receive the approval of the Heavenly King. But General Shi, commanding 150,000 troops, was actually ambushed by the enemy at his doorstep. Isn't that even more ridiculous?" As soon as he finished speaking, more and more officials looked at Shi Dakai with inquisitive expressions. Hey, no matter what, the Heavenly King put Yang Xiuqing under house arrest, but treated General Shi differently. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? Isn't it obvious who has what position in the Heavenly King's heart? What house arrest? It's just the Heavenly King being forced by public opinion to protect General Yang in disguise. Deceiving yourself. Shameless. The officials all had a deep understanding of the art of language. As the debate unfolded, more and more people were involved in this quarrel. In the Great Hall, the debate continued. The supporters of Yang Xiuqing and Shi Dakai were arguing, and no one could convince the other. In this debate, Su Zhe and the other officials were a group of complete bystanders. Su Zhe was very clear in his heart that these outsiders had no right to decide the fate of Heavenly Kingdom. At this moment, the ones who truly had the right to decide were these generals. Seeing this, Shi Dakai couldn't hold it in any longer and walked out with a flick of his sleeve. At this time, a leisurely voice suddenly came from outside the great hall. "Brother Shi." Hearing this, Shi Dakai stopped in his tracks and raised his head to look outside. The one who had come was the imprisoned Yang Xiuqing. As soon as Yang Xiuqing appeared, he caused a great uproar in the court. His supporters were naturally overjoyed, while Shi Dakai's supporters were livid. "Yang Xiuqing, how dare you? The Heavenly King has decreed that you are not to be summoned or to leave the residence. Now that the Heavenly King's corpse has yet to turn cold, you dare defy the decree? What are your intentions?" The one who had rebuked Yang Xiuqing was the vanguard of Shi Dakai's camp. Hearing this, a cold light flashed through Yang Xiuqing's eyes, but a warm smile still hung on her face. She said lightly, "The Heavenly King has passed away. As a subject, isn't it right to come to the palace to pay respects?" "You." Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing shook her head and turned to Shi Dakai. "Brother, can I have a word with you?" Shi Dakai gazed at Yang Xiuqing and finally nodded. To be continued. Chapter 527. In a side courtyard on the west side of the Emperor Palace, Yang Xiuqing and Shi Dakai sat facing each other. This side courtyard was usually where the ministers of heavenly state worked. But now it was quiet. Other than Shi and Yang, there was no one else around. The sudden death of the heavenly king had put the entire emperor palace in a state of panic. The palace maids and eunuchs stared at the prepared luggage, not knowing what to do. If it wasn't for the presence of these two people, the entire Tianjing city would have been in chaos. Hearing the news of the heavenly king's sudden death, Shi Dakai had immediately arranged for the army to take to the streets and enforce control over Tianjing city to stop any disturbances. Logically speaking, Shi Dakai, who held the military power, could easily seize power and take over. Unfortunately, with Shi Dakai's personality, he would not do such a thing. In reality, Shi Dakai had no intention of inheriting Hong Xiuquan's career. In Shi Dakai's eyes, the heavenly state's cause was just a dream. Now that he had woken up from the dream, Shi Dakai was even more lost. It was as if he had suddenly lost his direction and goal in life. "Brother, do you know about the historical heavenly state?" Yang Xiuqing picked up the teacup, took a sip, and asked calmly. "That's right. Then in your opinion, can the career of heavenly state be realized in this chaotic world?" Shi Dakai was speechless. Even heavenly king Hong Xiuquan would not believe it. In this chaotic world, only a hero can wield a sharp sword, cut through all obstacles, and wage war in all directions to create a truly peaceful world for the millions and millions of living beings. A trace of excitement flashed through Yang Xiuqing's eyes as she said that. "Mighty Lord." Shi Dakai's eyes narrowed and his expression changed for the first time. "Is that you?" "No." Yang Xiuqing shook her head and smiled bitterly. "I don't think I have that ability." "Then who is it?" Shi Dakai did not understand. He had thought that Yang Xiuqing had called him over to persuade him to withdraw from the competition. "Let me ask, who else in the southwest region is more suitable than that person?" Yang Xiuqing smiled and slowly revealed her trump card. "It's him?" Shi Dakai was so shocked that he almost slammed the table. "That's right, it's him." Yang Xiuqing stared into Shi Dakai's eyes and said firmly. "I didn't expect this, I really didn't expect this." Yang Xiuqing had mixed feelings when she heard that. He was well aware of the meaning behind Shi Dakai's word. "So, you've harbored disloyalty since a long time ago?" Shi Dakai restrained his emotions, his eyes suddenly becoming incomparably sharp. Suddenly, a surge of murderous intent burst forth from Shi Dakai's body, making it impossible for others to look at him directly. This was a ferocious tiger that was usually docile. Only in times of crisis would it reveal its ferocious claws and teeth. Even someone as experienced as Yang Xiuqing couldn't help but feel astonished. Shi Dakai was a valiant general of the present age. He truly lived up to his reputation. Yang Xiuqing was very clear that if he didn't give a good answer, he would be killed. Fortunately, Yang Xiuqing was not an easy person to deal with. The teacup in her hand did not move at all. "No." Yang Xiuqing shook her head and said miserably, "When the army was defeated, the other party did come into contact with me. But at that time, I didn't make up my mind. It was only when the heavenly king wanted to get rid of me that I had no choice but to do so." Yang Xiuqing's words were half-truths, and Shi Dakai couldn't find a single flaw in them. Recalling the secret conversation with the heavenly king yesterday afternoon, Shi Dakai let out a long sigh. Fate makes fools of people. At this point in the heavenly state, it was impossible to say who was in the right and who was in the wrong. "So, the heavenly king's sudden death has something to do with you?" The murderous intent in Shi Dakai's eyes did not diminish as he asked the most crucial question. When the heavenly king was found dead, the forensic doctor immediately rushed to the scene to examine the body. After some investigation, he only knew that the heavenly king and Chen Fei had died of an unknown poison. As for anything else, he knew nothing. In the last moments of her life, Chern Fei had placed the wax pellet back into the cavity of the fake teeth and put the teeth back in place. The only trace left was naturally gone. Therefore, the only conclusion was that the Heavenly King had been assassinated. However, according to the Heavenly King Palace Guard, there were no traces of anyone suspicious that night. The entire case had become an unsolved mystery. Of course, there were also those who suspected that the guard had purposely shirked responsibility in order to avoid punishment. No matter what, it would be impossible to find out the truth in a short period of time. And with the perilous situation in the heavenly state, who would have the mind to pay attention to the truth behind this unsolved mystery? To be honest, Yang Xiuqing was not prepared for the Heavenly King's sudden death. This operation was completely planned by the Black Snake Guard. It wasn't me. Yang Xiuqing did not know how to answer, and could only say these 3 words resolutely. Humph. Shi Dakai was deep in thought, still unable to calm down. Although Shi Dakai did not have much affection for the Heavenly King, it was impossible to say that he was not touched by the Heavenly King's forgiveness and trust in him yesterday. Therefore, if possible, Shi Dakai naturally wanted to avenge the Heavenly King. Unfortunately, the current him was probably powerless to do anything, because there was a huge shadow looming over the sky of Tianjing City, suffocating everyone. Yang Xiuqing knew where Shi Dakai's weakness was and said faintly, "Brother, for the sake of the people of the heavenly state, please do not do anything stupid." Hearing this, Shi Dakai's expression became more and more complicated. Is it worth it to drag the people of the city to death, just to avenge the Heavenly King? Shi Dakai had to face such a choice. Silence. It was a deathly silence. The last 2 pillars of the heavenly state sat facing each other in silence, their emotions fluctuating. Compared to Shi Dakai, Yang Xiuqing was much calmer. He was confident that he had not judged wrongly. Once a person's character was completely seen through by the opponent, he would be defeated before the battle even began. As expected, Shi Dakai gave a long sigh and slowly removed the military seal from his waist. He placed it on the stone table in front of him and said bitterly, "I hope you can let them live." The them Shi Dakai was referring to was naturally his supporters. Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing was shocked and waved his hand. "Brother, you don't have to be like this. As long as you and I come to an agreement, it doesn't matter who holds the military power." "No." Shi Dakai shook his head. "I am already disheartened and have no intention of participating in the court. Brother, you are in the prime of your life. It is the best time for you to make a name for yourself. Why are you so pathetic?" Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing frowned deeply. There was a hint of anger in his tone. He did this not only because he felt sorry for Shi Dakai's self-abandonment, but also because he had a mission at hand. The Marquis behind the scenes had specifically requested that Shi Dakai stay. Let's leave it at that. Shi Dakai had no intention of defending himself. He stood up and left. Wait. Yang Xiuqing stood up as well. May I ask if little brother has a clear destination in mind? In the vast wilderness, where can I not find shelter? Shi Dakai did not turn around. His voice was full of exhaustion. He was really tired and wanted to rest. Since you have no clear destination, why don't you make a trip to Shanghai City's military lecture hall? Yang Xiuqing's expression changed. He said sincerely, "You and I are both poor people with shallow foundations. The principal of the military lecture hall is war sage Sun Wu. Brother, you will definitely gain something from this trip. Not only can you stay away from the disputes of the court, but you can also increase your military knowledge. Why not? It's better than wandering aimlessly in the wilderness, isn't it?" Hearing this, Shi Dakai's body paused. He did not say anything and left. Looking at Shi Dakai's back, Yang Xiuqing sighed. He had done all he could. Even if the Marquis reprimanded him, he had nothing to say. The chaos in Tianjing City quickly came to an end after the 2 leaders reached an agreement. Yang Xiuqing held the military seal. With the support of his trusted subordinates, he successfully controlled the army in the city. No matter what, Yang Xiuqing's prestige in the army was still very high. Coupled with the instigation of the Military Intelligence Bureau, everything fell into place. In the court, seeing Yang Xiuqing gain power, the officials who had originally supported Shi Dakai were all panicking. Fortunately, Yang Xiuqing kept his promise. He only put them under house arrest and did not kill them. As for Shi Dakai, he disappeared. After taking power, Yang Xiuqing did not ascend to the throne as the outside world had guessed. His first order was to announce the official dissolution of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and surrender to Shanghai City. When the news came out, the Heavenly Kingdom was in an uproar. Some loyal followers were dissatisfied with Yang Xiuqing's decision and protested on the street. Yang Xiuqing's attitude was extremely unyielding. He used iron-blooded methods to forcefully suppress them. He knew very well that since he had decided to surrender to Shanghai City, he could no longer rely on luck. His current most important task was to clear all obstacles for the Marquis to enter Tianjin City. The news of Hong Xiuquan's sudden death, Yang Xiuqing's rise to power, and the surrender of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom swept across the southern Sichuan province like a hurricane. For a moment, the world was shaken. The players knew in their hearts that it was only a matter of time before Shanghai City wiped out the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. What shocked them was that it was so fast and so ingenious. The people could not help but sigh. How many trump cards did the Marquis of Lian Province have? At the same time, with the surrender of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, a shocking reality was placed in front of all the players in the China region. The Lord of Shanghai City, the Marquis of Lian Province, was not without clothes. He officially occupied a province. More than 90% of the lords had not been promoted to county cities. The vastness of Shanghai City's territory was really unrivaled. Only a king could have such a majestic appearance. The world was shocked. The ruler of a generation had officially revealed his ferocity. In a short period of time, no one in the China region could rival the Marquis of Lian Province. Affected by this, the Shanghai Alliance's reputation soared again, even more than before. The reputation that the Yan-Huang Alliance had painstakingly accumulated fell to the bottom in an instant. The entire southwest region seemed to be shrouded in the shadow of not without clothes. The protectorate of the southern border was becoming more and more worthy of its name. To be continued. Chapter 528. In the southern part of Guilin County, there were mountains that stretched for thousands of miles. In the forest, the trees were lush, ferocious beasts ran amok, bandits ran rampant, and people were rarely seen. There were only a few roads that could travel between the two counties, allowing them to communicate with each other. On the main road that connected Guilin County and Xuanzhou County, there were 2 large passes and more than 10 small passes. These 2 large passes were called Gui Ping Pass and Xianwu Pass. Among them, Gui Ping Pass was the most majestic, and it was the main road that connected the two counties. At this time, Ouyang Shuo was stationed at Gui Ping Pass. When Yang Xiuqing took control of Tianjin City, the Black Snake Guards immediately sent a secret letter to Ouyang Shuo. The victory of Tianjin City shocked Ouyang Shuo, and he was full of praise for the 2 intelligence agencies, the Military Intelligence Division and the Black Snake Guards. The intelligence system that he had invested a lot of money into had finally borne sweet fruit. In this battle, Shanghai City was able to take down the seemingly indestructible Tianjin City without losing a single soldier, and the 2 intelligence agencies could take credit for it. Meritorious service naturally had to be rewarded. Unfortunately, the Black Snake Guards were an organization that could not see the light of day, and Ouyang Shuo could not reward them. On the other hand, Ouyang Shuo had already sent an order to the Military Intelligence Division to give them a 4th-class merit. As for individual rewards, they could be directly evaluated by the Military Intelligence Division. What made Ouyang Sha even happier was that the Black Snake Guards had successfully found the Ming Dynasty firearm manufacturing technical manual that Ouyang Sha had dreamed of in Hong Xiuquan's bedroom. Originally, Ouyang Sha thought that Hong Xiuquan had only grasped the cannon manufacturing technology, but he did not expect that it was actually the entire set of Ming Dynasty firearm manufacturing technology. How could he not be ecstatic? With such a great weapon, the technological level of Shanghai City would rise to a new level. Yang Xiuqing took control of Tianjing City and immediately sealed the Emperor Palace. The belongings that had been loaded into the carriage were also sealed on the spot, waiting for the Marquis to deal with them. It was precisely because of this that the Black Snake Guards could freely enter and exit the Emperor Palace. They knew all too well what the Marquis wanted the most after going through so much trouble. Ouyang Sha immediately sent a letter to the Black Snake Guards, asking them to immediately send the Ming Dynasty firearm manufacturing technical manual back to Shanghai City and hand it over to the No. 7 Research Institute. At the same time, the greatest hero of this battle was buried, Death Guard Chen Fei, codenamed Cauliflower Snake. Other than rewarding the Black Snake Guard and the Military Intelligence Division, Ouyang Sha also issued a series of edicts in Guiping Pass, making arrangements for the military and political affairs of the territory after the war. Actually, some things had been brewing in Ouyang Sha's mind since a month ago. He only had to wait for the day of success before he could carry it out smoothly. He ordered the Tiger's Might General Lin Yi to lead the Royal Guard Division and immediately enter Tianjing City to take over the city's defense. Although the army in Tianjing City was already under Yang Xiuqing's control, Ouyang Sha was still worried that there would be chaos within the Taiping army over time. After all, among the 100,000 Taiping army, the number of troops that Yang Xiuqing could really control was probably less than 30,000. The remaining 70,000 soldiers relied on Shi Dakai's command talismans to control the other armies. Coupled with the deterrence of Shanghai City, Tianjing City temporarily calmed down. Thus, only when the Imperial Guard Division represented the territory and entered Tianjing City could the situation be considered to be truly stable and foolproof. Fortunately, the Imperial Guard Regiment was not far from Tianjing City. They would be able to reach there in the morning. With Lin Yi's ability, it was enough to frighten the rascals. He ordered General Bai Qi to lead the 3 divisions of the Dragon Xiang army to immediately stop advancing. Then, he directed the army to Zhen, a county in the west, to wipe out the remaining local forces. Although the local garrison troops of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had basically been transferred to Tianjing City by Hong Xiuquan, there were still some residual troops in the counties, and even some civilian armed forces. Ouyang Sha did not dare to take the territory established by sects lightly. If he did not arrange for the army to sweep through, how would he dare to arrange for officials to take over the cities? Ouyang Sha did not want to see the officials sent by Shanghai City to be attacked by bandits on the way. In other words, if they rushed to the city, they would be refused entry. If that happened, Shanghai City would lose all its face. At the same time, because Zhen and County was basically a bystander in this war, the local tyrants were basically not affected. Naturally, it would hinder Shanghai City's rule over this area. Therefore, no matter how he looked at it, Ouyang Sha had a reason to arrange for the army to carry out a major sweep. Of course, Ouyang Sha believed that Bai Qi would definitely understand his intentions and would not start any more massacres in Zhen and County. Killing God Bai Qi would only kill those that he thought deserved to be killed. He would not even bother to make a move. At the same time, Ouyang Sha ordered the 2 divisions of the Dragon Xiang army, who were responsible for escorting the prisoners of war of the Western Army, to immediately advance to the west and join up with the main army. The encampment of the Dragon Xiang army would also take this opportunity to move towards the west. The headquarters of the army would be set up at the southwest border of Zhen and County, facing Kunming County and Mengding County in Yunnan Province. It was not that Ouyang Shuo was guarding against Lingxi City, but he was using this opportunity to adjust the battle zones of the various armies after the war. At the same time, it was also the embryonic form of the future war zone. The future Dragon Xiang army would shoulder the heavy responsibility of protecting the western border of the territory. At the same time, the Dragon Xiang army would also be the main force to cooperate with Kunming County to attack the other 4 counties in Yunnan Province. The first to bear the brunt would naturally be Mengding County, which was adjacent to Zhenan County. Of course, even if they wanted to start a war, they would have to wait until next year. The territory had annexed 3 counties of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in one go, and it would take some time to digest. However, the early stage of external intelligence investigation work could be started early. After all, after experiencing this war, presumably no general would dare to underestimate the use of intelligence. At the same time, Ouyang Shuo ordered Great General Han Xian to lead the Leopard Army to the north, pass through Guiping Pass, and attack Guilin County in the north, sweeping up the remaining local forces. Similarly, the encampment of the Leopard Army that Ouyang Shuo had envisioned would be set up in the north of Guilin County. The future Leopard Army would shoulder the heavy responsibility of protecting the northern border of the territory. The first to bear the brunt would naturally be the North Sichuan Province and South Hunan Province. Guilin County bordered the 2 provinces, and both sides had a border that stretched for thousands of miles. Therefore, no matter if it was Han Xian or the Leopard Tao Army, being stationed in the northern territory was a heavy responsibility. Of course, Ouyang Shuo still trusted Han Xian very much. After experiencing 3 battles, Han Xian's ability to command troops had already been recognized by the officers and soldiers. The name of the immortal soldier spread like wildfire in the army. In this way, the 3 major armies of the territory would each guard a region. The Dragon Elephant Army guarded the west, the Brave Tiger Army guarded the east, and the Leopard Army guarded the north. As for the south of the territory, it was a vast ocean, so naturally, it would be the responsibility of the Navy to guard it. After arranging the military affairs, Ouyang Shuo sent a letter to the Shanghai Protectorate Office to arrange the affairs of the territory. He ordered the Chief of Administration, Xiao He, to arrange for the relevant officials to be stationed in the 3 counties and take over the cities one by one. The most important thing was naturally to appoint the 3 county governors. Only by selecting the most important county governor would Ouyang Shuo not have to personally attend to the affairs of the counties. After much consideration, Ouyang Shuo finally decided that Pei Ju would be the county governor of Guilin County. Although Pei Ju was proficient in military affairs, he was best at handling administrative affairs. Coupled with the decline of the civil officials in the territory, Ouyang Shuo could only reluctantly give up his treasure and send Pei Ju to guard a region for him. Pei Ju himself was quite willing to make this arrangement. Guilin County was located in the northernmost part of Chuanan Province, bordering both Chuanan Province and Xiangnan Province. It could be said to be a land of war. Moreover, Guilin County was the route of retreat that Hong Xiuquan had previously arranged, so the resistance in the county was bound to be strong. Because it was not easy to govern Guilin County well. At this time, only the famous official Pei Ju could take on this heavy responsibility. As for the county governor of Xuanzhou County, Ouyang Shuo chose the current county governor of Laizhou County, Bao Xia. As for Yang Xiuqing, who was temporarily in charge of Xuanzhou County, he would be transferred to the county governor of Laizhou County. Of course, before Bao Xia arrived at Tianjing City, Yang Xiuqing would temporarily manage the affairs. No matter how much he trusted Yang Xiuqing, Ouyang Shuo could not arrange for Yang Xiuqing to hold a post in one of the 3 counties under the rule of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. That was too dangerous, and it might not be a good thing for Yang Xiuqing. As the old saying went, if you don't want to be betrayed by others, don't give them the conditions to betray you. Therefore, the only way was to be transferred to another place. After arriving at Thunder Prefecture, Yang Xiuqing could finally put down the heavy burden in his heart. He could display his strengths and fully display his ambitions. Perhaps a famous official would be born from this. Xuanzhou County was the central county of the South Sichuan province, and it was also the foundation of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. During the war, it had been swept away by the three armies of Shanghai City, and the local power had been greatly damaged. Therefore, among the counties, the position of the county governor of Xuanzhou County could be said to be a cushy job. Ouyang Shua transferred Bao Shuya to be the county governor of Xuanzhou County, which could be considered as a kind of recognition of his ability to govern Laizhou County. Bao Shuya's task was to stabilize the people's hearts and restore Xuanzhou County's economy as soon as possible. The economic potential of Xuanzhou County was also the strongest among all the counties. As for Zhenan County, Ouyang Shua chose the current magistrate of Mulan Prefecture, Mu Lanyue. As the first lord to draw close to Ouyang Shua, it was time for Ouyang Shua to give the little girl the fruits of victory. Mu Lanyue was also the only one among the three county governors who had been promoted, and the Dragon Xiang army, where Mu Guiying was, would be stationed in Zhenan County. With this layer of relationship, Ouyang Shua believed that the communication and coordination between the local military and government would not be a problem. After the army's battle zone was designated, the daily supplies of the army would naturally be the responsibility of the local county. The War Preparedness Division could not transport rations, fodder, and other supplies to the army across thousands of mountains and rivers. This was not realistic, nor was it reasonable. Therefore, in the future, the army would have to deal with the local government. And this was also an area that Shen Buhai, who was in charge of the Shanghai Guards, would focus on monitoring and guarding against. To be continued. Chapter 529. P.S. Updated. Since the establishment of the territory, Ouyang Shua had implemented a strict separation between the military and the government. Therefore, he would never allow the commanding general and the local officials to take this opportunity to form any relationship that they shouldn't have, or to breed any chain of interests that shouldn't exist. However, Mu Lanyue was different. The little girl admired Ouyang Shua very much. Moreover, her ambition wasn't here. That was why Ouyang Shua was so at ease with her. Raising Mu Lanyue's status was also to pave the way for her in the future. Of course, Mu Lanyue's ability was also recognized by Ouyang Shua. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used a county as an experimental field to nurture the little girl. Compared to Pei Ju and the other famous officials, Mu Lanyue was naturally inferior. Therefore, Ouyang Shua specially mentioned in the official letter to Shao He that the officials assigned to Zhenan County must be those with rich experience. Ouyang Shua could be said to have given a lot of thought to Mu Lanyue. The only problem was that once Mu Lanyue went to Zhenan County, she wouldn't be able to use the teleportation array in Mulan City. She would have to go to Shanghai City to play with Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua wanted to help, but he couldn't. Forget it. How could she grow up without experiencing wind and rain? When a young eagle grew up, it would have to soar in the sky by itself. As his hegemony grew, Ouyang Shua's mentality also became more and more seasoned. According to Song Jia, he was clearly a young man in his early 20s, but he already had the demeanor of a middle-aged uncle. Ouyang Shua already had the self-awareness of being a senior to Mu Lanyue. The two of them were clearly only a few years apart. It had to be said that Ouyang Shua was really old. Moreover, in this past year, Ouyang Shua didn't stay in Shanghai City for long. He basically spent most of his time outside. Thinking about it carefully, he really had a hard life. In addition, Ouyang Shua also transferred the magistrate of Yunnan Prefecture, Cui Shaoxi, who had a promising future, to Zhenan County to take up the post of Zhenan County's administrative chief to assist Mu Lanyue in handling government affairs. Of course, according to the administrative structure of Shanghai City, the administrative chief of a county was actually half a rank higher than the magistrate. When mentioning Cui Shaoxi, one had to mention the Cui clan. According to the letter Song Jia sent him, the entire Cui clan had officially moved to Shanghai City a week ago. As for Bai Clan Trading Company, they still hadn't given Song Jia a definite answer. Who knew what Bai Gui, this old fox, was selling in his gourd? The Black Snake Guard's search for Fanli had a clue. According to the letter from the Black Snake, it would take at most a week to locate Fanli and Shi Shi. Ouyang sure reckoned that Bai Gui wouldn't be waiting for Fanli, right? These merchants had too many twists and turns in their minds. They were not straightforward at all. After Ouyang Shua decided on the 3 candidates for the county governor, the trouble had only just begun for Xiao He. The county governor had been chosen, but it was a huge problem to appoint all the officials from the various regions. In less than 4 months, Shanghai City had occupied Zhaoqing County, Wuzhou County, Xuanzhou County, Zhenan County, and Guilin County. Compared to 4 months ago, the area of the territory had expanded by nearly 2 times. It was extremely inappropriate to expand on a large scale in such a short period of time. It would inevitably lead to a lack of stamina, causing the accumulated foundation of the territory to be greatly weakened. The core problem was the shortage of talent. Lianzhou County was the county with the deepest foundation. Although Cheongzhou County was desolate in the beginning, its foundation grew stronger day by day under the support of Cliff Mountain City's territorial characteristics. Liezhou County, which was previously occupied, was still fine because it was ruled by overlord players. Even Zhaoqing County had a certain amount of foundation. After occupying it, with the support of the new territorial characteristics, it could quickly keep up with Lianzhou County's pace. However, Ouyang Shua didn't dare to compliment the newly occupied 4 counties of South Sichuan Province. Needless to say, Wuzhou County was simply a mess under Qiu's brutal governance. Ouyang Shua had no choice but to send an important official, Fan Zhongyan, to personally govern the county. Under Hong Xiuquan's rule, Xuanzhou County, Zhenan County, and Guilin County were wholeheartedly focused on external expansion. The internal affairs of the territory were also a mess. If not for Su Zhi and the others managing it, it would probably be even worse. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had been wreaking havoc in the 3 counties for nearly a year, and all their foundation had been destroyed. The essence of the entire 3 counties had probably been gathered by Hong Xiuquan to support Tianjin City. Therefore, it could be said that there was a long way to go to govern these 3 counties. If the 3 counties were to all follow the bureaucratic system of Shanghai City, the number of officials needed would be extremely shocking. In addition, during this period of time, the administrative office had followed Ouyang Shua's instructions and conducted a comprehensive inspection of the officials in the territory, eliminating hundreds of unqualified officials in one go. Therefore, even if the territory had a powerful machine like the Southwest University China Hall, it still couldn't keep up with the speed of the territory's expansion. According to Xiao He's preliminary calculations, the number of officials in the territory would reach an astonishing 1,500 people. With no other choice, Xiao He could only personally go to the capital cities and use the reputation of the Holy Land of the 100 Schools to recruit talented people with generous pay. Of course, Xiao He definitely didn't dare to go to Xianyang City. Moreover, it would be useless even if he went. Even so, Xiao He was only able to recruit some low-level officials. The real talents would do well in the capital and wouldn't easily take the bait. The huge number of officials made Xiao He unable to eat or sleep in peace. With no other choice, Xiao He could only discuss with Jiang Shang that the winter students of the Southwest University China Hall would have to undergo the graduation examination in advance. Those who passed the examination would immediately be assigned to various places. At the same time, Xiao He also earnestly asked the dean of the School of Classics, Meng Zi, to use the influence of the Confucian school to summon all the Confucian scholars to Shanghai City to become officials. Xiao He also made the same request to the other 100 schools of thought. With all these efforts, the number was barely 1,000. As for the remaining vacancies, they could only think about it at length. The vacancies would be temporarily filled by the local officials. Xiao He joked that he was making up the numbers. After all, the 1,500 official vacancies was calculated by Xiao He after considering the available officials in the 3 counties. Therefore, the person who temporarily replaced them was really someone who was useless. All of a sudden, the overall quality of the territory's bureaucracy dropped a whole level. Regarding this, whether it was Xiao He or Ouyang Shua, there was nothing they could do. If it wasn't for the fact that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was really too big to resist, Ouyang Shua originally didn't want to be so eager for quick success. Unfortunately, the situation was already like this, and Ouyang Shua had to continue. Of course, everything had its pros and cons. Once Shanghai City completed this round of digestion, a brand new territory would stand tall in the Southwest land. At that time, the territory would rise from the ashes. A dynasty had already begun to take shape. Yes, it was a dynasty. According to the current size of the territory, other than the foundation, at least in terms of territory, there was not much difference between them and the dynasties in history. Of course, it was also because of the huge disparity in foundation that it was only the embryonic form of a dynasty. After dealing with the military and political affairs after the war, Ouyang Shua prepared to pack his luggage and set off for Tianjin City. Although the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had surrendered, Ouyang Shua had to go to Tianjin City to assume command. Furthermore, there were probably many matters in Tianjin City that required his personal decisions. For example, the disposal of the 100,000 Taiping soldiers, the settlement of the civil and military officials of the Heavenly State, the disposal of the property in the city, especially the Heavenly Emperor Palace, and so on. Yang Xiuqing was cautious and would not make any decisions on her own. On the 18th day of the 11th month, Ouyang Shua led his troops and left Guiping Pass. Because Ouyang Shua had already officially appointed him as the governor of Guilin County, Pei Ju naturally stayed behind when Ouyang Shua left Guiping Pass with his troops. Pei Ju would meet up with the Leopard Tau Corps led by Han Xin at Guiping Pass and enter Guilin County together. At the same time, there were only 2 mountain barbarian independent divisions following Ouyang Shua to Tianjin City. The remaining independent division was stationed at Guiping Pass and Xuanwu Pass. 5,000 mountain barbarians were stationed at Xuanwu Pass, while the rest were stationed at Guiping Pass. Only when Han Xin and his troops arrived and took over the defense of the 2 passes, would the mountain barbarian independent division head south to meet up with Ouyang Shua. The mighty army exited the pass and disappeared into the horizon. In the distance there stood a huge city. It was Tianjin City. Ouyang Shua would stay there for a period of time to draw up and implement his grand blueprint. It could be said that the surrender of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was an important juncture of Ouyang Shua's hegemony. Because of this, he could be considered to have officially stepped onto the path of a mighty lord, establishing his position in the wilderness. At this stage, ordinary setbacks were no longer able to topple Ouyang Shua's rule. This was the foundation. And just as Ouyang Shua was planning out his territory blueprint, a sudden upheaval immediately made his plan come to nothing. It gave him a heavy blow when he was at the peak of his ambitions. Gaia Year 2, November 19th, at the northern border of Guilin County. The morning sun shone on the vast wilderness at the border, peaceful and warm. At this time, a huge army suddenly appeared in the wilderness. As far as the eye could see, there were flags fluttering in the wind, swords and spears standing in great numbers. There was no end in sight. The endless army, like a ghost, suddenly charged into Guilin County. On the day after Ouyang Shua led his troops away from Guiping Pass, More than 10 lords from the south of the northern Sichuan province joined forces with the 100,000 coalition army of the southern Xiang city-state. Taking advantage of the emptiness of Guilin County, they brazenly launched an invasion. The two armies totaled more than 200,000. With lightning speed, they forcefully charged into Guilin County. To be continued. Chapter 530. The 200,000-strong Allied army instantly started a monstrous massacre in Guilin County. Strictly speaking, the garrison of Guilin County still existed and had not been transferred to Tianjing City by Hong Xiuquan. After all, Guilin County was Hong Xiuquan's backup plan. He would not destroy his own future. In addition to the garrison, there was also a field army of more than 20,000 people stationed in Guilin County. Following Yang Xiuqing's control of Kingdom of Heaven, Guilin County instantly became a mess. This was because the field army stationed in Guilin County could be said to be Hong Xiuquan's trusted subordinate. Seeing that the Heavenly King had passed away, his successor, Yang Xiuqing, had actually immediately surrendered to Shanghai City. The enraged army was naturally unwilling. However, they did not have the guts to attack Tianjing City. The soldiers had nowhere to vent their anger, so they could only vent it on the people in the county. On the other hand, the attitude of the local garrison troops of Guilin County was much more ambiguous. Their loyalty to the Heavenly King had not reached the point of risking their lives to avenge him. In addition, most of the soldiers in the local garrison were from Guilin County, and they were responsible for defending their territory. Naturally, they would not tolerate the field army acting recklessly in the county. The two military forces were quietly competing in Guilin County. This was precisely the reason why Ouyang Shua arranged for the Mountain Barbarian Independent Regiment to be stationed at Guiping Pass and Xianwu Pass. It was precisely to prevent this disturbance from spreading to Xuanzhou County. Originally, Ouyang Shua could lead his troops to quell the unrest in Guilin County. Unfortunately, the situation in Tianjing City was still unstable, and Ouyang Shua was urgently needed to oversee it. After weighing the pros and cons, Ouyang Shua decided to put Guilin County aside for the time being. Once Han Xian arrived with his troops, all the problems would naturally be solved. Apart from that, Ouyang Shua had another sinister motive. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos in Guilin County to let the irrational field army destroy the hearts of the people gathered by the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. As the saying goes, the hearts of the people are against him. Ouyang Shua did not want the people under his rule to have any nostalgia for the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Wasn't the chaos of the field army digging their own graves? As for the civilian casualties caused by this, it was not within Ouyang Shua's consideration. As a king, how could he be soft-hearted all the time? Ouyang Shua might even be extremely pleased with himself for this plan of his. Who would have thought that such an inconspicuous oversight would allow the cunning enemy to seize the opportunity? The chaotic Guilin County was no match for the 200,000-strong army. In addition, there seemed to be an expert guiding the enemy and a great general leading them. Naturally, they were invincible and victorious. In just 3 days, more than half of Guilin County had fallen. At this moment, the commander of the Allied forces unexpectedly split the army into 3. The 60,000-strong army stayed in Guilin County to continue their unfinished mission. The 80,000-strong army marched straight south, heading straight for Guiping Pass. The remaining 60,000 soldiers went to attack another pass, Xuanwu Pass. It was this act of splitting up the troops that completely established the coalition army's chances of victory. If the Allied forces were to cross the pass, break into Xuanzhou County, and engage in a fierce battle of life and death with the army of Shanghai City, the Allied forces naturally did not have the confidence or strength to do so. However, it was necessary for them to occupy these 2 passes and completely block off the path that Shanghai City's army could take to the north. Otherwise, the newly conquered Guilin County would have to face the constant threat of Shanghai City's army. Just thinking about it made people feel uncomfortable. Therefore, only by occupying the pass could their battle plan be considered to have achieved complete success. Precisely because of this, everything had to be done quickly. The Allied forces had to complete the occupation of the two passes before the army of Shanghai City returned to reinforce them. Otherwise, there was no need to mention anything else. Thus, both the Allied forces and the army of Shanghai City were in a race against time. 2 days ago, on the 20th of November, Guiping Pass. More than 8,000 elite barbarian soldiers were stationed in Guiping Pass, and the one in charge of leading this barbarian army was the young general that Ouyang Shua thought highly of, Shi Hu. On the second day after the Allied forces invaded Guilin County, a secret letter from the Military Intelligence Department was sent to Guiping Pass. Whether it was the Military Intelligence Department or the Black Snake Guard, the infiltration of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was mainly concentrated in Xuanzhou County, with Tianjing City as the core. Because of the limited manpower and energy, their infiltration of Guilin County and Zhenan County was somewhat insufficient. Even so, it was already not easy for the Military Intelligence Department to obtain accurate information on the second day. Shi Hu was shocked when he received the news. The sudden attack of an elite army of 200,000 had come without any warning. The sudden heavy pressure pressed down on this young general to the point that he was almost unable to breathe. Strictly speaking, this was the first time Shi Hu was leading an army alone, and he had to face such a test of life and death. For a young general, this was indeed too cruel. Without experiencing it personally, outsiders would not be able to understand this kind of pressure. Some of the generals in the army even instantly collapsed under the heavy pressure. On their shoulders were the lives of thousands of people. The slightest mistake would probably cause them to fall into a bottomless abyss. Fortunately, there was still a capable person in Guiping Pass at this time. He was Pei Ju. At the crucial moment, Pei Ju stood up and became the temporary military advisor of the garrison. During the attack on Xuanzhou County, Ouyang Shua had always kept Pei Ju by his side and often asked him for advice. Thus, Shi Hu trusted his old subject Pei Ju greatly. It was Pei Ju's consolation that allowed Shi Hu to quickly calm down and think of a countermeasure. Compared to the young Shi Hu, Pei Ju's insight was very shrewd. He immediately concluded that the enemy's move to Guilin County was unusual. As long as the enemy was not stupid, they would eventually attack Guiping Pass. Thus, Pei Ju immediately arranged for several messengers to ride on fast horses to inform the Marquis army that was already on the way. At the same time, he ordered for Guiping Pass's defense facilities to be improved. Guiping Pass was the same as Southern Town Pass, a fortress built in the wilderness. The basic defense facilities inside the pass were quite complete. After Hong Xiuquan took over Xuanzhou County, he had also arranged for craftsmen to repair the pass. The resources inside the pass were also considered sufficient. The only regret was that Hong Xiuquan's treasure, the cannons, were not placed at the pass. Thus, Pei Ju's so-called repair was only to repair the damage caused by the mountain barbarians' attack on Guiping Pass. At the same time, a large number of defensive resources were moved to the city walls. November 21st, noon. Strong sunlight shone through the red clouds and roasted the wilderness. On the distant horizon, a cavalryman in light armor suddenly appeared. On the side of the cavalryman, there was an empty warhorse, galloping along the way, stirring up clouds of dust. At this moment, a hint of joy appeared in the cavalryman's eyes. In front of him, there was an army of tens of thousands of people marching forward. Marquis, urgent military news. As the cavalryman galloped, he constantly waved the flag on his back and shouted loudly. Marquis, urgent military news. On this ordinary afternoon, the messengers Pei Ju sent only used a day and a half to catch up to the main force led by Ouyang Shua. Because of this, a total of 3 excellent war horses were exhausted to death along the way. Even the messengers fainted after completing the task. While marching, Ouyang Shua could not receive secret letters. Thus, he was late by a full 2.5 days before receiving the news that the Allied army was attacking Guilin County. At this time, Ouyang Shua was less than 2 days away from Tianjing City. According to the time, the Leopard Tau Corps led by Han Xian was at least 3 days away from Guiping Pass. On the way, they could not be contacted, so they could not be counted on for the time being. Hearing the news, Ouyang Shua's heart trembled, and then he flew into a rage. "Little thief, you actually dare to mess with the Tai Sui." Ouyang Shua did not expect the lords of North Sichuan province to collude with Xiangnan City so quickly. What was more hateful was that they dared to take the initiative to provoke Shanghai City. On second thought, Ouyang Shua could only smile bitterly. He had to admit that the enemy's timing was really ingenious. At this time, Shanghai City seemed to be at the peak of hegemony, but it was also at its weakest. It had an extremely vast territory, but it did not have a matching army. Only after completing the reorganization of hundreds of thousands of Taiping soldiers could Shanghai City be considered really powerful. However, the enemy seized this opportunity. It seemed that the enemy was sure that Shanghai City did not dare to start a large-scale war with them at this time. "I'm afraid there is an expert behind the Allied army." Ouyang Shua gradually calmed down and pondered. What he did not know was that when the Allied army broke into Guilin County, the 100,000 Allied army of Lingnan City frequently stirred up trouble at the border. Obviously, they were cooperating with Xiangnan City to be responsible for restraining the Lingnan war zone. There was no doubt that this was a well-planned plot. After Shanghai City destroyed the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, the fear of Shanghai City's lords players toward Shanghai City reached an all-time high. This time, a total of 3 provinces had joined forces for the sake of curbing the rise of Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua got rid of his thoughts and immediately ordered the army to turn around and go straight to Guiping Pass. The Allied army knew the importance of the pass. How could Ouyang Shua not know? That was why he didn't even think about it and led his troops back without any regard for the consequences. He hoped that Guiping Pass could hold. Unfortunately, the 2 mountain barbarian independent divisions led by Ouyang Shua were out-and-out infantry. Even if they rushed all the way, it would take at least 2 days to rush back to Guiping Pass. By then, it would be too late. Fortunately, Ouyang Shua still had a cavalry, which was the 3,000 Divine Martial Guards. Ouyang Shua immediately decided to personally lead the Divine Martial Guards and set off first. As for the Mountain Barbarian Independent Division, they followed behind and advanced toward Guiping Pass at the fastest speed. Everything was really a race against time. To be continued. Chapter 531. November 22nd, early morning, Guiping Pass. With the help of the morning light and the dew, the 80,000-strong coalition army marched on the undulating mountain road. In front of Guiping Pass, there was a long and narrow mountain road, twisting and turning. The 80,000-strong army was lined up in a straight line, stretching for dozens of miles, with no end in sight. It was so dense that it made people panic. The army marching forward was like a huge black dragon, winding in the mountains and rivers. At first glance, there was a strange sense of beauty. Who would have thought that this was a group of tigers and wolves that would choose their prey, a group of determined, cold-blooded killers? At the front of the army was a phalanx of sword and shield soldiers. They would be the main force to attack the pass. Behind them were rows of archers and crossbowmen. Because the mountain road was rugged, the coalition army could not carry large siege weapons. They only carried simple ladders. Occasionally, there were a few heavy giant battering rams. At the end of the army, there were more than 10,000 elite cavalry. In the middle of the cavalry phalanx, there was a middle-aged general who was particularly eye-catching. He had sword-like eyebrows, bright eyes, and a determined expression. He wore a red robe, silver armor, and a gold-plated helmet. This middle-aged general was the commander of the coalition army in charge of attacking Guiping Pass. He was also the general of the 200,000-strong coalition army, Li Mu. Li Mu, a famous general of Zhao during the Warring States period, was one of the 4 famous generals of the Warring States period. During the Battle of Chongping, Li Mu was only a good general at the northern border of Zhao. It was not until the end of the Warring States period that Li Mu shone. Li Mu first fought against the Xiongnu at the northern border of Zhao, then he mainly fought against Qin. Because of the Battle of Ian, he heavily injured the Qin army and received the title of Lord of Martial Peace. In 229 BC, King Qian of Zhao fell into the trap of Qin. He listened to slander and seized Li Mu's military power. Not long after, he killed Li Mu. And the designer of the trap was Wang Jian, one of the 4 famous generals. Needless to say, Li Mu was a famous general who could not be underestimated. With the appearance of Li Mu, the 4 famous generals of the Warring States period finally appeared in the wilderness. Bai Qi served Shanghai City, Wang Jian was under Emperor Qin, and Lian Po was under Di Chun. As for Li Mu's lord, it was still a mystery. He only knew that it was one of the lords of the allied forces. With such a great general in the coalition army, it was no wonder that they were able to capture more than half of Guilin County in just 3 days without encountering any decent obstacles. One had to know that even if they wanted to gallop across the entire Guilin County, it would take at least 3 to 4 days. This was because Guilin County was long and narrow from east to west and narrow from north to south. Li Mu gazed at the fortress in the distance, deep in thought. The scene in front of him was obviously beyond his expectation. For one thing, Li Mu did not expect that a large number of troops were stationed in the pass. Logically speaking, since the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had surrendered, neither the Taiping army nor the Shanghai army had any reason to stop at the pass. If they really had an army, why didn't they enter Guilin County? Everything was a mystery. After all, only a few people knew of Ouyang Shua's good intentions. Secondly, Li Mu did not expect that the enemy seemed to have already known of their existence. The intelligence system of Shanghai City was truly impressive. Therefore, Li Mu also thought of another point. Since the garrison of the fortress has received the news, the garrison of Shanghai City in Xuanzhou County must have also received the news, right? Maybe the reinforcements of Shanghai City are already on their way. From this, it could be inferred that the capture of Guiping Pass was urgent. Because once the reinforcements of Shanghai City arrived, Li Mu really did not have the confidence to capture Guiping Pass in one fell swoop. It seems that the military counselor's plan has been changed. Li Mu muttered to himself, but the look in his eyes became more and more determined. No change could stop the Allied forces from achieving their strategic goal. Guiping Pass must be taken. Although Li Mu was best at cavalry warfare, he was also good at attacking cities and seizing strongholds. When 2 enemies met on a narrow road, only the brave would win. Inside the fortress, on the city wall, when the fierce 80,000 Allied troops appeared on the mountain road in front of Guiping Pass, they would be faced with an iron-blooded army that was ready to defend the pass with their lives. At this moment, the blood of the mountain barbarians suddenly boiled. In this battle, they would fight for the new barbarian king, to prove their loyalty and bravery. All the failures and humiliations would be washed away with the blood of the enemy. Military exploits were always the greatest glory of a soldier. Pei Ju, the old minister, stood in the center of the city wall, watching the army in the distance with a grave expression. The number of the enemy was somewhat beyond his expectations. How long could an army 10 times their size hold out? In addition to Guiping Pass, there was another pass that Pei Ju was worried about, Xuanwu Pass. But there was nothing he could do to help Xuanwu Pass. In fact, the 2 passes were not next to each other. There were hundreds of miles between them. Therefore, what Pei Ju could do was to try his best to protect Guiping Pass, the main pass. Pei Ju did not completely give up on Xuanwu Pass. He did not transfer the 5,000 mountain barbarian soldiers stationed in Xuanwu Pass. After all, if there was not a single soldier stationed in Xuanwu Pass, the enemy could easily take Xuanwu Pass. They could even take a detour to Xuanzhou County and catch Guiping Pass unprepared. Therefore, whether it was Guiping Pass or Xuanwu Pass, they could not be easily lost. These two passes could be said to be the two important gates to the north of the Mountain Sea territory. Once the gates were opened, it would be a sign of great decline. Woo, accompanied by the low sound of a bugle horn, the great battle suddenly began without any warning. The two sides did not provoke each other, nor did they criticize or curse each other. Ever since the battle began, the two armies had entered the fiercest and most tragic battle of offense and defense. Pei Ju's confidence in defending Guiping Pass was first because of the strength of the mountain barbarian soldiers, and second because the pass was narrow, which was not conducive for the Allied army to launch a large-scale attack. Therefore, although the Allied army had a vast army, the number of soldiers that could be invested in a unit of time was limited. As the saying went, one man can hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. Impregnable passes were not just words. What was about to be tested now was the will and battle power of the 8,000 mountain barbarians. They had to endure under the continuous attacks of the enemy. They could not be discouraged in the slightest. Once the mountain barbarians showed signs of fatigue, a gap would appear in the defensive line, giving the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of. Muffled shouts echoed in the quiet mountain ridges. Every moment there were people dying on the battlefield. Batches of the Allied army were sent to the front line by Li Mu, and they fell one after another. The strength of the mountain barbarian soldiers made all the Allied soldiers look askance. The defense line formed by the 8,000 mountain barbarians, braving the continuous rain of arrows from the Allied army, efficiently and orderly harvesting the lives of the Allied soldiers like the god of death. The soldiers looked grim, and their eyes were fanatical. Shi Hu, the commander of the mountain barbarians, took the lead and killed the enemy the most bravely. This group of mountain barbarians seemed to be born for war. No enemy would make them retreat. For a whole morning, the Allied army launched 5 waves of fierce attacks, but they were all defeated. At the foot of the city wall of Guiping Pass, there was already a 1-meter-high pile of white bones. Similarly, under the baptism of the rain of arrows, the mountain barbarian soldiers on the city wall also suffered heavy losses. The mountain barbarians were strong, but they were too brave and did not know how to be flexible. When killing the enemy, they did not know how to protect themselves at all, and were killed one by the rain of arrows. More than 1,000 mountain barbarian soldiers slept forever in Guiping Pass. Seeing that it was already noon, Li Mu did not want to give the mountain barbarians any chance to breathe at all. The well-rested army replaced the battered remnants of the army, continuously launching a fierce attack on Guiping Pass. The speed at which the troops changed from the front to the back was amazing. The mountain barbarian soldiers on the city wall only had time to drink water and swallow a cold steamed bun, and the densely packed enemy troops once again rushed to the top of the city wall through ladders. Brothers, kill! Shi Hu swallowed the last mouthful of steamed bun, drew his tang knife in advance, turned around and waved, cutting off the head of an Allied soldier, and a long line of blood splashed in the air. The blood splashed on the steamed bun in the hands of the mountain barbarian soldiers, but the soldiers did not care at all. They did not even wipe it off and directly swallowed it with blood. How could the bloody deeds of the Qiyu era be easily erased? Seeing this, the Allied soldiers were all shocked. The enemy in front of them was not so much human, but a group of evil spirits from hell. They were afraid before the battle began. However, the bugle call to attack was endless. The Allied soldiers could only grit their teeth and fight with this group of evil spirits. This battle caused even the heavens and the earth to change color. The red clouds above Guiping Pass formed a huge vortex, slowly rotating. Endless blood qi and murderous intent converged into the blood-colored vortex, which was very frightening. This battle was not only a race of time, but also a competition of the will of the two sides. In the face of endless attacks, the mountain barbarian soldiers were like immortal gods of war. Their bodies were filled with a steady source of power, and they did not show any signs of fatigue. Seeing that the sunset had already risen in the distant sky, Li Mu's expression also became more and more solemn. The tenacity of the enemy was beyond his expectation. Because of this, Li Mu even thought of his old opponent, the powerful soldiers of the Great Qin. At that time, the Qin army was also so brave and fierce. I didn't expect that there would be such an iron-blooded army in the wilderness. Li Mu sighed and ordered the troops to retreat, ready to fight again tomorrow. After a day of attack, although the Allied forces suffered heavy losses, more than 25,000 people, according to Li Mu's estimation, more than half of the garrison troops in the stronghold had been killed or injured. The remaining 4,000 soldiers would face the strong attack of the Allied forces tomorrow. If everything went well, they would be able to take Guiping Pass by noon tomorrow. Li Mu's will had never been so firm. The military counselor was right. Shanghai City was a giant dragon that was about to take off. They had to give this dragon a fatal blow before it took off. Otherwise, there would be no space for other territories in the southwest to survive in the future. Even if you're a dragon, you'll still have to coil up. To be continued. Chapter 532. When the morning sun once again shone on the top of Guiping Pass. Yesterday's battle was staged again. The two armies, which had rested for a night, once again threw themselves into this fierce battle of life and death without hesitation. Obviously, the Allied forces felt that today's advance was much smoother than yesterday's. The 4,000 barbarian soldiers looked at the seemingly endless army, and for the first time, hesitation appeared in their eyes. With just them, they could not even occupy the walls of Guiping Pass, leaving gap. From time to time, the Allied soldiers would take advantage of the gaps and climb up the walls fearlessly. Sure, who had to personally lead a firefighting team to go between the walls and extinguish all dangers. Even so, they were in danger again and again, with heavy casualties. It seemed that the battle situation could no longer be maintained. The huge difference in the number of troops between the two sides directly caused a qualitative change from quantitative change. The balance of the war was completely tilted towards the Allied forces. Even the powerful mountain barbarian soldiers were unable to split themselves into two, unable to face such a vast army. Coupled with Li Mu's brilliant command, the Allied forces advanced and retreated in a well-coordinated manner. The saber and shield soldiers and archers cooperated well, and the fire cover and close combat attacks were smoothly linked. Even when facing the remnants of the army, Li Mu went all out without any carelessness. And this was one of the qualities that distinguished a famous general from an ordinary general. For a moment, Guiping Pass was on the verge of collapse. Pei Ju stood on the city gate tower with a solemn expression. Suddenly, a trace of pain flashed across his face. He got up and came to Shi Hu's side, saying bitterly, "General Shi, prepare to retreat." "What?" The young general was already covered in blood, but even so, he could not hide his shocked expression. "I said, retreat." Pei Ju understood the mood of a general like Shi Hu at this moment, but he still had to make the most rational decision. He said painfully, "Guiping Pass can no longer be defended. Don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Just take it as leaving some roots for the first independent army of the barbarians. Don't let its name disappear completely." Shi Hu was speechless. He turned his head to look at the men who were still fighting with all their might, and a trace of pain flashed across his eyes. After this battle, the elite army that the Marquis had the highest expectations for would really cease to exist. No. Unexpectedly, Shi Hu shook his head once again. A rare smile actually appeared on his blood-stained face. He faintly said, "Sir Pei, you are an important minister that the Marquis thinks highly of. You are different from us uncouth fellows. You should not die here. How about this? I'll immediately arrange for a group of guards to escort you out. What about you? Peiju looked at Shi-Hu and felt increasingly uneasy. Hearing this, the young general suddenly grinned. Under the illumination of the sun, this smile was so pure and calm, filled with a beauty that one could not look at directly. At this moment, Shi-Hu's heart seemed to have been elevated once again. Sir, we are different. Shi-Hu turned around, looking towards the distant horizon. In that direction, under the blood-colored sky, there seemed to be a type of mysterious power guiding this young mountain barbarian officer, allowing him to obtain a type of mysterious comfort. We are warriors, barbarian mountain warriors, the most loyal guards of the barbarian king. Shi-Hu's voice was low and calm, as if he had suddenly let go of all his burdens and only calmness remained in his heart. Barbarian mountain warriors can only die in battle, they cannot be deserters. Shi-Hu tightened his grip on the blade in his hand, faintly smiling once again. This is our fate. Hearing this, a trace of emotion flashed through Peiju's eyes. At this moment, his impression of the mountain barbarians completely changed. Before, in Peiju's eyes, especially after being persecuted by Chi-Yu, the mountain barbarians were a synonym for uncouth and arrogant. But at this moment, he deeply felt the outstanding qualities of this race. Tenacity, silence, bravery, not good with words, not afraid of sacrifice. All of these beautiful qualities were best expressed in them. This was a race that made people feel deep respect. They would not say words like kindness or loyalty all day, but at the most crucial moment, they would put them into practice. As the saying goes, it is easy to know but difficult to do. To be able to do this, just how rare and precious was the mountain barbarian race? Thinking about it now, it seemed that the Marquis did not subdue the mountain barbarian race on the spur of the moment. Most likely, the Marquis had long seen their rare and precious qualities. Thinking of this, Peiju sighed in his heart. He did not expect that with his old age, there would be prejudice in his eyes. Peiju glanced at the mountain barbarian officer on the other side, a trace of decisiveness flashing past his eyes. He gently said, "Since that is the case, then this old man's old bones might not be able to move any more. I will stay here and accompany you all." "Sir, you must not." Shi-Hu, who had been calm just now, suddenly became anxious and waved his hands repeatedly. "Why not?" Peiju had already made up his mind. "Sir, you are a civil official. Governing the territory is your strength. Why do you have to accompany us soldiers and sacrifice our lives in vain on the battlefield?" "No." Peiju shook his head and said with a smile, "General, you are wrong. This old man's current identity is the military advisor of the garrison at Guiping Pass. I am a proper soldier, not some civil official." "But," Peiju waved his hand and said, "there are no buts, it is decided. General, return to your post. Even if we die, we will make the enemy pay a heavy price. The glory of Shanghai City cannot be blasphemed." Shi-Hu gave Peiju a deep look, a strange emotion flashing through his eyes. At this moment, the two people who had been estranged suddenly seemed to understand each other. In the end, the young general did not say anything. He solemnly saluted Peiju, turned, and left. Peiju stood where he was, leisurely gazing at the army outside the city, thinking about something. Peiju had not expected that there would be a day when his blood would boil and he would bravely die for justice. Scenes of the past flashed through his mind, and for a moment, he was filled with emotion. Recalling the past, the extraordinary years. Young, at the prime of his youth. A scholar's spirit, full of vigor. Conquering the Turks, passing through the western regions, lofty aspirations, wanting to be made a marquis. Conquering Liaodong, suppressing the north. Once remembered, going to Jiangdu to strike the water, the waves stopping the flying boat. Passing through the Great Tang, ascending the stage to pay respects to the Prime Minister. How much misty rain had there been! The past events were all joked about. Accompanying Pei Ju's impassioned words, the remaining mountain barbarian soldiers launched their strongest attack. Kill! 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 The rhythm of the battlefield suddenly sped up, the sounds of killing shaking the heavens, spreading in all directions. A group of mountain barbarian soldiers with the will to die, singing the battle song of the mountain barbarian race, facing tens of times the number of enemies without any fear. One by one, they bravely sacrificed themselves, throwing themselves into the embrace of the god of death. They were using their actions to fulfill their silent promise to the barbarian king. The mountain barbarian soldiers were worthy of their name, did not disappoint the expectations of the barbarian king, did not disgrace the glory of the division. Life, at this moment, was so heavy. Almost every moment, there would be a mountain barbarian soldier falling. Sure who was in pain, had completely transformed into a blood-red tiger, rampaging on the battlefield. The fall of each brother made the blood red in the tiger's eyes become even thicker. Towards the end, the blood tiger completely displayed its might, letting out a heaven-shaking roar. Ah! Sure who loudly shouted, suddenly going berserk. His body immediately enlarged, becoming extremely powerful. For a moment, on the battlefield, there was no one who could match him. Perhaps it was because they were influenced by Sure who, and added with the influence and guidance of the atmosphere of the battlefield, the remaining mountain barbarian soldiers all roared, one by one completing their berserk transformation. In an instant, the power of slaughter gathered. The attack of the Allied forces was suddenly interrupted, and the whole line of attack was stopped. His aura was truly terrifying. Every time the mountain barbarians went berserk, they could bring a surprise to the enemy. Only Li Mu, who was at the back of the army, showed a hint of a smile. He had heard a little about the berserk transformation of the mountain barbarians. He knew that although the enemy suddenly became stronger, it was actually just the last radiance of the setting sun. Once the Allied forces survived this wave, victory was in front of them. Therefore, Li Mu did not show any mercy. He ordered the army to press forward and resist the enemy's strongest blow. Li Mu looked up at the sun in the sky. There were still 2 hours before noon. In other words, he could complete the task of taking down Guiping Pass ahead of time. On the battlefield, it was still an organized army. Although a small group of elite soldiers could be fierce for a while, it would not last long. Because this was a war, not a contest between warriors. The sad song of Guiping Pass was still being sung. It seemed that even God was unwilling to let this awe-inspiring army really go to the end. The turning point suddenly came. Just when Stone Tiger's army was in a desperate situation and was about to die, on the mountain road to the north of Guiping Pass, a cloud of dust suddenly rolled up, and then came the rumbling sound of horse hooves. In the rolling dust, the dazzling golden dragon flag was shining in the sun. It's the Marquis. The Marquis has come to reinforce us. The lookout of Guiping Pass immediately discovered the army that suddenly appeared outside the pass. Pei Ju was shocked when he heard that. He quickly turned around and looked over, and a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. At this time, the golden dragon flag was like a lighthouse, saving the huge ship of the mountain barbarians that was about to be drowned. It's really the army of the Marquis. Hearing the news, there was a burst of cheers on the top of the city wall of Guiping Pass. The cheers were louder and louder, which made Li Mu's heart tremble in the distance. A bad premonition arose spontaneously. Did the variable finally appear? Li Mu muttered to himself. Ouyang Shuo looked up at Guiping Pass, which was getting bigger and bigger in his eyes. Looking at the Lord flag of Shanghai City that was still fluttering over the pass, he let out a long sigh of relief. He led the divine martial guards to travel day and night. In addition to taking care of the war horses, he even ate on the horse. Finally, at the last moment, they arrived at Guiping Pass. To be continued. Chapter 533. Ouyang Shuo's arrival was like a shot in the arm for Guiping Pass. Although the divine martial guards he brought with him numbered less than 3,000, they were a truly invincible force. They had experienced countless battles of various sizes and had not suffered a single defeat. Whether it was the ferocious River East warriors or the strange Chiyu blood guards, they did not make this army fall. Every member of the divine martial guard had been promoted to the 12th rank. They had reached the limit of a soldier's rank. Their individual combat strength was comparable to that of a junior general, or even a mid-level general. Ouyang Shuo was confident that even with just the divine martial guards, they could hold the pass for a day. Behind Guiping Pass, there were still 2 mountain barbarian independent regiments rushing over as reinforcements. In addition, the Leopard Tau Corps led by Han Xian was estimated to be only 2 days away from Guiping Pass. The Allied forces' attempt to take down Guiping Pass would most likely come to nothing. Ouyang Shuo led his troops into the pass, and his eyes couldn't help but twitch when he saw the scene on the city wall. He saw countless mountain barbarian soldiers lying in pools of blood. It was impossible to count. Countless arrows were stuck in the corpses. The 4 mountain barbarian independent regiments that Ouyang Shuo had planned had lost a pillar before they even received an official designation. Perhaps even the Allied forces would not have imagined what kind of damage they had done to Shanghai City this time. Obviously, the mountain barbarian soldiers had reached the most difficult moment. Thus, without any greetings, the divine martial guards immediately attacked as soon as they climbed the city wall. They took their positions one by one, filling in the gaps left by the death of the mountain barbarians and fighting with the Allied forces. Even Ouyang Shuo did not speak. He drew the Scarlet Knight sword from his waist and straightened his back. Even though he did not say a word, he was using the most direct action to boost the morale of the soldiers and encourage them to fight bravely. Marquis! King! Following Ouyang Shuo's appearance, waves of cheers rose and fell from the top of the city wall. The soldiers shouted the Marquis name and fearlessly killed their way forward. The moment Ouyang Shuo arrived at Guiping Pass, the blood-colored whirlpool above the pass shook. A huge blood-colored dragon suddenly appeared and suppressed the huge whirlpool. The blood-colored whirlpool immediately stopped spinning. Immediately, a formless wave of fate enveloped the warriors of Shanghai City. If someone were to observe carefully, they would be shocked to find that more than half of the tens of thousands of arrows shot by the Allied forces had quietly changed their trajectories, causing them to miss their targets. In a short period of time, the casualties of the soldiers decreased sharply. This was the manifestation of karmic luck. In the Battle of Guiping Pass, because of the timely appearance of the Divine Martial Guard, the situation of the battle took a turn for the worse. Although the Allied forces still had the upper hand, Li Mu no longer had the confidence to take down Guiping Pass before noon. In particular, the casualty figures of the Allied forces made Li Mu's heart tremble. The main force attacking the pass was the frontline army of 50,000 sword and shield soldiers. The 20,000 crossbowmen were only long-range support. As for the 10,000 cavalrymen, it was only a reserve force. In yesterday's battle, more than half of the saber and shield troops had been killed. In addition to today's battle, there were less than 20,000 saber and shield troops left. It seemed that they would not be able to form an overwhelming advantage over the city walls. On the city wall of Guiping Pass, in addition to the more than 2,000 divine martial guards brought by Ouyang Shuo, there were more than 2,000 barbarian soldiers left, nearly 5,000 in total. Li Mu really did not have the confidence to attack the 5,000 trump card troops of Shanghai City with 20,000 sword and shield troop. Not to mention that the enemy was the trump card of the trump card. Even if it was an ordinary elite force defending the city at this time, the ratio of 1-to-4 attacking and defense was also an extremely dangerous boundary. Needless to say, the place they were attacking was a precipitous mountain pass. This can't go on like this. Li Mu shook his head and made up his mind. He glanced at the cavalrymen around him and issued a bloody military order. all 10,000 cavalrymen were required to abandon their horses and temporarily serve as infantry to join the siege. It should be noted that these cavalrymen were all elites trained by Li Mu, and they were best at cavalry battles in the wilderness. Now, they had to abandon their best war horses and climb ladders to attack the city. Li Mu felt very distressed at the thought of it. Unfortunately, the development of the situation no longer allowed him to be merciful. Li Mu was very clear that he had to maintain the numerical advantage over the enemy in order to capture the opposite pass. Otherwise, there was no need to mention anything. It had to be said that Li Mu was indeed a famous general. At the critical moment, he could be decisive and did things without hesitation. The cavalry troops were the personal guards of Li Mu. Naturally, none of them was a coward. After receiving the military order from the general, without any hesitation, they uniformly dismounted, pulled out the machetes at their waists, and marched forward in formation. 10,000 well-rested and vigorous cavalrymen suddenly threw themselves into the front line of the battlefield. The defensive pressure of the Divine Guards suddenly increased. What was worse was that the mountain barbarians' frenzy had ended. They began to enter a period of weakness, and their combat power was greatly reduced. For a moment, the whole line of defense began to shake again. Not to mention the mountain barbarians, even the Divine Guards were exhausted after a day and a half of long-distance attack. The current battle was just overdrafting and squeezing their physical strength in advance. It had to be said that the battlefield was indeed ever-changing. Both sides could change the balance of the war at any time because of a decision. Ouyang Shua's perception was so sharp that he could not help but frown when he found the abnormality of the battlefield. The decisiveness of the enemy's general was indeed somewhat beyond his expectation. At that time, there must be a new troop to replace the mountain barbarian soldiers. Otherwise, if the mountain barbarians were forced to hold on after the frenzy, it would only cause more casualties. Once all the mountain barbarians were killed, no matter how strong the Divine Guards were, it would be of no use. Obviously, Ouyang Shua's previous judgment was too optimistic. The general of the Allied forces was really a difficult opponent. The problem was, where could he find a new troop now? Ouyang Shua frowned and tried hard to search in his mind, not letting go of any detail. Suddenly, a troop appeared in his mind. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua became spirited and shouted, "Pei Ju!" "Yes, sir." Pei Ju had not left the city gate tower. Hearing the Marquis's shout, he immediately rushed over. Go and bring the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army detained in the pass here, and give them weapons." When the Imperial Guards captured Guiping Pass, except for those who died in the battle, the rest of the Taiping army surrendered to Shanghai City. There were about 3,000 people. They were temporarily detained in the pass, waiting to be reorganized by the Military Affairs Bureau. Now, this group of surrendered soldiers was Ouyang Shua's only hope. "Marquis, if we recruit the surrendered soldiers now, I'm afraid," hearing this, Pei Ju looked a little hesitant. The surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army were different from other surrendered soldiers. Even if they surrendered, there might still be die-hard followers of Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan among them. Therefore, this group of surrendered soldiers had always been an unstable factor. They had to wait until the Military Intelligence Bureau carefully investigated and completely reorganized before they could be mobilized with confidence. And now was obviously not a good time to mobilize the surrendered soldiers. If they were not careful, it might have the opposite effect and lead to a greater tragedy. Therefore, before the Marquis arrived with reinforcements, even at the most desperate time, Pei Ju did not think of mobilizing the 3,000 surrendered soldiers detained in the pass. Of course, this also had to do with Pei Ju's lack of prestige. Ouyang Shua certainly knew Pei Ju's concerns. He waved his hand decisively. "We can't care so much now. Let's deal with the current situation first. I'll arrange a company of Divine Guards for you." As he said this, Ouyang Shua gave Pei Ju a meaningful look. Obviously, Ouyang Shuo also had doubts about this, but he had to do it. The compromise was to arrange 100 divine guards to be responsible for monitoring the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army and take over their command. Understood. Pei Ju knew that the situation was urgent, so he said nothing more. The Marquis arranged him to deal with the surrendered soldiers not only because he had no one else to use, but also because he was counting on his diplomatic skills. Whether or not he could pacify the Taiping soldiers would depend on Pei Ju. Ouyang Shuo did not have time to think too much. After making the arrangements, he turned around and joined the battle. This battle could be said to be the most difficult one Ouyang Shuo had ever experienced. Even when he confronted Qiu's army, Ouyang Shuo was not forced into this situation. It had to be said that the Allied forces had played a really good hand. Another half an hour had passed. The feeling of weakness in the barbarian soldiers became stronger and stronger. Even picking up weapons was a little difficult. At this time, the reinforcements Ouyang Shuo was expecting did not appear. Could it be that something happened when Pei Ju went to persuade the surrendered soldiers? Ouyang Shuo's heart sank. He was already prepared to fail. At this time, it was already useless to let the barbarians fight head-on. Ouyang Shuo had to order all the barbarian soldiers to retreat. The entire line of defense was taken over by the Divine Guard. For a moment, the pressure increased. Even Ouyang Shuo was no longer relaxed. He had no time to think about other things, because at every moment there were several or even more than 10 soldiers of the Allied forces pouncing on him. The red knight sword in Ouyang Shuo's hand emitted a blood-red light. Strictly speaking, this was the first time the red knight sword appeared, and it amazed the world. Unfortunately, no one appreciated it. The killing sword technique was skillfully executed by Ouyang Shuo. Perhaps, at this moment, Ouyang Shuo deeply understood the essence of the killing sword. The killing sword was a sword of the battlefield. Only the battlefield was its destiny. The peerless sword technique that had been buried in history reappeared in the world, sweeping up a monstrous massacre. Perhaps he was influenced by the killing sword. Ouyang Shuo's mind was surprisingly calm at this moment. He did not have any thoughts. He no longer paid attention to the entire battle situation, and he no longer thought about why Pei Ju did not appear. In his heart, there was only the sword intent of the killing sword. Any enemy in front of him was enveloped by the sword intent. To be continued. Chapter 534. P.S. Update. The red sun hung high in the sky. Guiping Pass was still filled with endless killings. At the center of the city wall, with Ouyang Shuo at the center, a marvelous scene appeared. In this clamorous and chaotic battlefield, Ouyang Shuo had actually entered into a rarely seen state of selflessness. The so-called selflessness was not really forgetting one's own existence. True selflessness referred to letting go of all distracting thoughts in one's heart and focusing on one's true self. Ouyang Shuo's heart at this moment was the killing sword technique. Therefore, in his heart, other than the killing sword, nothing else existed. It was this purity that allowed his mind, consciousness, and body to be in perfect harmony, allowing him to fully immerse himself in the study of the killing sword. A moment of comprehension in the realm of selflessness was equivalent to a day's work, or even several days' worth of work. More importantly, some of the content that was usually difficult to comprehend could be suddenly enlightened under the state of selflessness, and the natural moat became a smooth path. And this was called enlightenment. Thus, what anyone who comprehended the Tao desired the most was to be able to enter a state of selflessness. In this realm, although Ouyang Shuo didn't pay attention to the outside world, the scarlet firmament sword in his hand started to move instinctively. He was using the slaying sword technique. The killing sword's sword intent that was released from this could automatically capture any enemy's killing intent. As long as someone revealed killing intent towards Ouyang Shuo, they would automatically be locked down by the killing sword's sword intent. Because of this, no matter if it was a nameless soldier or a commanding general, so long as an enemy stood before Ouyang Shuo and appeared within his field of vision, they would automatically be enveloped by Ouyang Shuo's killing intent. Under the killing sword, there would be no survivors. Ouyang Shuo, who held the Crimson Knight treasured sword in his hand, didn't seem like an emperor, but like a god of slaughter instead. He moved about on the city wall while drifting indeterminately, and every single time he attacked, he would be able to take away the lives of one or even a few enemy soldiers. Under the envelopment of his sword insight, the enemy's every move was completely exposed to Ouyang Shuo's senses. As time passed, Ouyang Shuo became more and more proficient in using the killing sword technique. With the continuous slaughter, traces of blood qi began to gather on the Scarlet Knight sword. The Scarlet Knight sword was a sword of the Emperor Dao. Unlike the Sky Demon's spear, the divine sword itself would not devour the enemy's blood essence. Therefore, the wisps of blood qi could only gather on the sword god. The more it gathered, the denser it became. This scene was slightly similar to the scene of the nameless general practicing when Ouyang Shuo was learning the sword scripture all those years ago. This meant that Ouyang Shuo had truly touched the essence of the slaughter sword. Only a peerless general could possess such a frightening might and domineering demeanor that dominated the entire army. Who would have thought that it would appear on a noble marquis? On the battlefield, regardless of whether it was the divine martial guards who were still fighting or the barbarian soldiers who had already retreated to the side to rest, all of them let out blood-boiling shouts. To be able to serve such an unrivaled hero, what was there to worry about in life and death? The morale of the entire army soared. Kill him! The commander of the saber and shield troops of the Allied forces was a burly man with a full beard. His eyes were as big as copper bells, and his face was fierce-looking. Because of his luxuriant beard, people called him the Bearded General. Seeing this, the Bearded General personally led his troops to surround and kill Ouyang Shuo on the spot. In an instant, over 100 soldiers, including General Bearded, attacked Ouyang Shuo in unison. Marquis. Seeing this, the divine martial guards were alarmed. They wanted to rush over to help, but they were entangled by the Allied forces. Be careful, Marquis. The barbarian soldiers wanted to pick up their weapons, but they found that they did not even have the strength to stand up. The after-effects of going berserk had entered the most critical moment. Their entire bodies were sore and powerless. Ouyang Shuo was about to die in the chaos. The bearded general revealed a sinister smile. Hearing how the divine martial guards called him, he felt even more proud. He knew that he had accidentally caught a super big fish. As long as he killed this person, this battle would definitely be won. The bearded general was already imagining the scene of receiving rewards in front of the Lord. In addition, the treasured sword in the other party's hand also made the bearded general drool. One look and one could tell that this divine sword was extraordinary. If he could snatch it and offer it to the Lord, wouldn't it be even better? Thinking of this, the bearded general's expression became even more sinister. The large saber in his hand was ready to strike. At this moment, Ouyang Shuo was still immersed in the enlightenment of the slaughter sword. He seemed to be unaware of everything around him, and only instinctively waved the Scarlet Knight's sword in his hand. Kill! In an instant, hundreds of sabers came from all directions and covered Ouyang Shuo's head. Marquis. Whether it was the divine martial guards or the barbarian soldiers, their eyes were all red. At this moment, the corners of Ouyang Shuo's mouth suddenly curved into a smile, as if he was happy, enlightened, and delighted. He slowly spat out 3 words, "Common people kill." Ouyang Shuo spun 360 degrees on the ground, and the Scarlet Knight's sword in his hand swept out. Suddenly, the evil blood qi that enveloped the Scarlet Knight's sword suddenly broke out of the sword, turning into red sharp blades that shot towards the surrounding soldiers. In an instant, dozens of soldiers fell. Even the bearded general was seriously injured. The encirclement was instantly broken. Good. The worried divine martial guards let out a deafening cheer. Apart from the Marquis, who in the world could be a match for such divine power? At this moment, the soldiers' worship of the Marquis had reached an extreme level. The barbarian soldiers on the side even shed tears of excitement. The barbarian king of this generation was fixed. The new barbarian king was also brave and extraordinary, but also had wisdom and benevolence. What more could the barbarian tribe ask for if they could have such a master who was virtuous, wise, and brave? The soldiers cried tears of joy. And Ouyang Shua? His killing was far from over. The Scarlet Knight's sword in his hand became brighter and brighter, stealing people's souls and taking their lives. 4 killing generals! Ouyang Shua's eyes narrowed, and the Scarlet Knight's sword in his hand suddenly appeared in front of the bearded general without a trace. He pushed the sword forward and swung it. A fierce general of the generation had fallen. General! The surrounding soldiers of the coalition army couldn't help exclaiming. The death of their general greatly reduced the morale of the coalition army. On the contrary, the morale of the divine martial guards was high. Just like that, relying on Ouyang Shua's courage, the army miraculously persisted again. At this moment, a rush of footsteps came from below the city gate tower. The 3,000 surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army led by Pei Ju finally arrived. If one observed carefully, they would find that there were less than 3,000 surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army on the city gate tower. Even Pei Ju's body was splashed with blood. Obviously, the persuasion did not go well, and there must have been some trouble. Fortunately, the final result was still acceptable. With the addition of this batch of fresh troops, the defense line of Guiping Pass gradually stabilized. This batch of soldiers of the Taiping army was originally the garrison of Guiping Pass, so they were very familiar with the defense facilities inside the pass. As soon as they entered the battlefield, they smoothly got into the role without any adaptation. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua was relieved. The most difficult hurdle was finally over. With the divine martial guards as the center and the Taiping army as the support, the whole defense line was as stable as Mount Tai. This battle could be said to be full of twists and turns. The whole fierce battle lasted from early morning to evening. Both sides did their best, no longer leaving any leeway, and played all their trump cards. By the time the 2,000 mountain barbarians recovered and reappeared on the city gate, the outcome had been determined. The coalition army had completely lost the last chance to capture Guiping Pass. Against the sunset glow, Li Mu's expression was extremely gloomy, as if it was about to drip water. Originally, he was confident of winning the battle, but in the end, he ended up with a heavy loss of soldiers and generals. For Li Mu, capturing Guilin County was the most important military operation since he showed up in the wilderness. Before the attack on Guiping Pass, everything was so perfect. However, at the pass in front of him, Li Mu and the army he led were defeated. Retreat. Li Mu was indeed a peerless general. Although he had endless regrets, he did not lose his mind. He knew very well that it was already a delusion to capture Guiping Pass with the defeated soldiers in his hands. In that case, he might as well withdraw as soon as possible and rush back to Guilin County to make a long-term plan. Li Mu believed that with the military counselor's ability, there must be a solution. Under the setting sun, the army of less than 40,000 retreated from the front line. After a short rest, they gradually disappeared into the mountains along the rugged mountain road. This soul-stirring battle at the checkpoint came to an abrupt end, drawing an imperfect full stop at this point. On the city gate of Guiping Pass, watching the coalition army gradually disappearing, Ouyang Shua was lost in thought. Who is the commander on the other side? Marquis, according to the letter from the Military Intelligence Department, this person is Li Mu, a famous general from the Warring States period. He is not only the commander of the attack on Guiping Pass, but also the commander of the 200,000 coalition army. It was Pei Ju who answered Ouyang Shua. Li Mu? I see. Ouyang Shuo looked up at the sunset in the distant sky and suddenly fell silent. His tall and straight body looked even taller and more imposing under the setting sun. Pei Ju looked at the back of the marquee, feeling a little guilty. Just now, he had learned from the soldiers about the dangerous situation of the battle. He knew that if the marquis did not show his great power, the consequences would be unimaginable. Because the reinforcements of the Taiping army came late, the marquis almost lost his life. No matter in which territory, it was a capital crime. However, when the marquis saw Pei Ju, he just said lightly, "You are here." Then, he threw himself into the battlefield. Not a single word of blame, not a single word of questioning. That was why Pei Ju felt more and more upset. The marquis trusted him, but he almost screwed up. It was really shameful. Recalling what happened in the prison, Pei Ju still had a lingering fear. Back to an hour and a half ago, Pei Ju led 100 divine martial guards to the temporary prison on the first floor of the pass. Although it was called a prison, it was actually a small closed military camp. The 3,000 surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army were detained here. To be continued. Chapter 535. In the prison of Guiping Pass. When Pei Ju stepped into the prison, he was faced with pairs of strange eyes. Although the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army were detained, they were not completely isolated from the outside world. They knew very well that Guiping Pass was facing the enemy's attack at this time, and the situation seemed to be somewhat unfavorable. The intention of the minister of Shanghai City suddenly coming to the prison at this critical juncture was thought-provoking. Everyone. Pei Ju looked ahead, and his voice suddenly became infectious. He said in a deep voice, "There's no need to hide anything. I think you all already know that Guiping Pass is facing the enemy's fierce attack." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sudden uproar in the barracks. It was one thing to hear it, but it was another thing to hear it from the mouth of this minister. Among the crowd, a trace of strange light suddenly flashed in the eyes of a few people. The situation is critical now. Guiping Pass may fall at any time. Pei Ju pressed his hands down to calm the uproar and continued, "Once Guiping Pass falls, Shanghai City will naturally suffer heavy losses. I'm afraid that your lives will be in danger. I'm afraid you still don't know? Guiping County has been occupied by the enemy, and the Taiping army in the county has all been wiped out. Therefore, I advise you not to have any illusions. This group of enemies will not be merciful to you." Pei Ju's words were equivalent to extinguishing the thoughts of some people. Unfortunately, there were still many people who were not afraid of death, or rather, those who were loyal to the Heavenly King. When they heard that Guilin County had fallen, not only did they not feel a trace of grief or indignation, but a trace of joy flashed across their hearts. As the saying went, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Obviously, in the eyes of these loyal people, Shanghai City was their enemy. Pei Ju's eyes were very sharp, and he immediately sensed the strangeness in the crowd. However, these people had not come out to cause trouble, and Pei Ju could not deal with them, so he could only wait and see. "Everyone, now is the time to prove your loyalty to Shanghai City. Put on your armor, pick up your weapons, and fight side by side with the Marquis personal guards, the Divine Martial Guards. For Shanghai City and for yourselves." Pei Ju knew that time was tight, and he did not want to make a long and tedious speech. Only by linking this battle with the lives of the surrendered soldiers would they be able to arouse their desire to fight. As he spoke, the Divine Martial Guard that came with Pei Ju had already opened the armory and distributed the armor and weapons to every surrendered soldier. After receiving their weapons, the aura of the 3,000 surrendered soldiers changed. The team, which was originally soft and weak, instantly had a hint of iron and blood, like an army that had experienced a great war. "Humph, you make it sound nice, but you just want us to work for your master." Suddenly, a discordant voice came from the crowd, and the tone was filled with undisguised ridicule. One wave stirred up 1,000 ripples. "That's right. Isn't it too late to think of us now that you can't hold on any longer?" Now that they had weapons in their hands, these people spoke with more confidence, and their attitudes became arrogant. "Exactly. Before this, they treated us like criminals. When did they ever treat us as their own people? Now that you're in trouble, you only remember that we're on the same side. How laughable." Bah! For a time, doubts about Peiju and Shanghai City rose one after another. When the divine martial guards saw this, they immediately pulled out the Tang sabers at their waists and waited. "What, you want to silence us? Come on." With weapons in their hands, these surrendered soldiers really did have a trace of fear. In the crowd, there were people purposely trying to incite the army to cause trouble. "Brothers, look. They need us now, that's why they're so polite to us. Once the battle is over, I'm afraid that people like us will be abandoned again. That's right. Instead of working for them, why don't we kill our way out and make a living for ourselves?" "Yes, kill our way out. They can't even protect themselves, let's see how they can stop us." Under the instigation of some people, the crowd became restless. Some of the soldiers looked at Peiju and the others with malicious gazes. Seeing this, Peiju's heart trembled. If these 3,000 surrendered soldiers really wanted to cause trouble, just the 100 divine martial guards would not be able to suppress them. Most importantly, Peiju was still worried about the Marquis' safety. The longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be. Thinking of this, Peiju's gaze suddenly became incomparably sharp. He suddenly stepped out from the crowd and loudly said, "What, you want to rebel?" Instantly, an oppressive aura surged towards the surrendered soldiers, causing their hearts to palpitate. The surrendered soldiers opposite him jumped in fright. They didn't expect that this seemingly refined old man would actually be so mighty when he was enraged. "I am rebelling, what can you do?" In the crowd, there were some brave men who weren't scared by Peiju. They stepped out and slashed at Peiju with their sabers. Seeing this, Peiju was not afraid at all. "How dare you!" The divine martial guard behind Peiju was enraged. With a roar, he instantly passed Peiju and arrived in front of this person. With a flash of a saber, the enemy's head fell to the ground. Blood spurted out and splashed onto Peiju's robe. In that instant, the entire army camp fell silent. Everyone present was stunned by the strength of the divine martial guard. They didn't even see when the enemy pulled out his saber before their comrade's head fell to the ground. This level of saber technique was truly superb. "Murder! Brothers, fight to the death with them!" After the silence, there was an even louder uproar as the crowd became agitated. Seeing this, Peiju's eyes turned cold. He knew he couldn't drag on any longer and signaled to the divine martial guards around him. Seeing this, Peiju's eyes turned cold. He knew he couldn't drag on any longer and signaled to the divine martial guards around him. The divine martial guards received the order and quickly took out their bows and arrows. With lightning speed, they shot towards the crowd. The sharp arrows pierced through the air, not a single one missing. Miserable cries rose and fell one after another. Looking closely, they saw that the people who were cheering the loudest in the crowd were all shot and fell to the ground. This level of archery once again shocked the surrendered soldiers. 100 divine martial guards were actually able to intimidate 3,000 surrendered soldiers. Seeing this, Peiju spoke at the right time and said loudly, "Everyone, think about what you should do to benefit yourselves and your families. I don't want you to be incited by a few people with ulterior motives and lose your lives for nothing." Pausing for a moment, Peiju continued, "In this battle, anyone who makes a contribution will immediately be promoted and get rid of their status as surrendered soldiers. With the generosity of the Marquis, he will not be stingy with your rewards. One is a dead end that leads to hell, while the other is a broad road that leads to glory and wealth. Isn't it obvious which one to choose?" Coupled with the bloodstains at the scene, Pei Ju's words were undoubtedly very persuasive. The remaining surrendered soldiers were deep in thought. Without being incited by someone with ulterior motives, most of the surrendered soldiers were rather rational. This was especially so for the soldiers from Sunzhou Prefecture. When they thought about how their wives and children were still in the hands of Shanghai City, they immediately lost their temper. "Lord, tell us what to do. We will just do as you say." Finally, someone stood up and expressed his willingness to follow the command of Shanghai City. Seeing this, Pei Ju finally heaved a sigh of relief. He pointed to the divine martial guards around him and said, "You all saw them just now. They are the personal guards of the Marquis and the strongest warriors of Shanghai City. Now they will temporarily lead you into battle and kill the enemy." The surrendered soldiers already had a direct impression of the divine martial guards, so they naturally did not have any dissatisfaction. Because time was tight, after hurriedly forming the formation, Pei Ju led them up the city wall. Because of this, the scene that Ouyang Shua had seen before appeared. On top of the city wall. Just as Pei Ju was immersed in his memories, an urgent shout woke him up. Reporting to the Marquis, urgent military news. A messenger hurriedly ran over. Ouyang Shua, who was standing on top of the city wall, heard this and turned around to receive the letter handed over by the messenger. The letter was sent from the Xuanwu Pass. The striking red color on the cover gave Ouyang Shua a bad premonition. Just now, he was standing on top of the city wall and looking into the distance because he was worried about the situation at Xianwu Pass. In a situation where there were no reinforcements, could the 5,000 barbarian warriors at Xianwu Pass hold the pass? To be honest, Ouyang Shua did not have the slightest bit of confidence. However, between the two passes, Ouyang Shua had to make a choice. The wilderness was that cruel. When he opened the letter, it was still a striking blood red. The entire letter was actually written in blood. To General Shi Hu, Xianwu Pass was suddenly attacked. We soldiers were ordered to defend it. However, there were too many enemies and we were outnumbered. The position was about to be lost. We have failed to live up to the Marquis' expectations and can only atone with death. General, there is no need to reinforce Xianwu Pass, because I am already the last survivor in the pass. After sending this letter, I will be buried together with my brothers in Xianwu Pass. I only hope that in our next lives we will still be brothers. Please send our greetings to the Marquis and pay our respects to the king. A nameless barbarian warrior. After reading the letter, Ouyang Shua's expression changed. He was filled with grief and indignation, and a trace of tears flickered in his eyes. The brave and fearless warriors were using sacrifice to express their loyalty. As the target of the warriors' loyalty, Ouyang Shua was powerless. He could only look on helplessly as his men courageously went to their deaths. For the first time, Ouyang Shua hated this game so much. He hated how realistic it was. Pass this letter to Shi Hu. Ouyang Shua's voice instantly became hoarse. He was indescribably tired. After passing the letter to Pei Ju, he turned around again and faced the distant horizon. At this moment, the sunset seemed to be especially bright red. Ouyang Shua's back suddenly seemed lonely and desolate. He wanted to mobilize the army of Shanghai City to break into Guilin County and start a life-and-death battle with the enemy. He wanted to take revenge with blood. Unfortunately, the conditions did not allow him to do so. At this moment, Shanghai City was really unable to support another war. Ouyang Shua could only endure it for now. To be continued. Chapter 536. Guilin County, Bushan City. Bushan City was located in the middle of Guilin County, and was the largest city in the county. Outside the city was the world-famous Li River. Along the river, the scenery of Guilin was beautiful. The headquarters of the coalition army was located in Bushan City. As the sweeping operation in the county came to an end, the lords all moved to Bushan City. In the Battle of Zhaoqing County, the lords of the Southern Alliance, followed the army, but in the end, they all committed suicide and returned to the city. From then on, the lords were extremely cautious when it came to following the army into battle. South Xiang City State only had south of Rosy Cloud City, the city lord of Rosy Cloud City, and another lord named Gu Fenxiao. Gu Henxiao was the lord of the famous General Li Mu. As for the North Sichuan province, because there was no city-state yet, therefore, only a dozen or so lords from the southern part of the province went to the battle. Among them, the representative was called Lord Shimen. Just like his name, it was rumored that Lord Shimen was a famous playboy in real life. After entering the game and relying on the support of his family, he managed to make a big name for himself. In the North Sichuan province, Lord Shimen could be considered a number one figure. The lords gathered in Bushan City this time. In addition to commanding, the most important thing was to discuss the distribution of benefits after the battle. The huge Guilin County was like a piece of fat meat. After taking it, how to distribute this cake was very important. In addition, how to arrange the garrison of Guilin County after the battle was also an important topic. Since they had already taken Guilin County, no one would think of leaving after getting a share. And to manage Guilin County, they naturally needed to station a large army. Although this time the coalition army had caught Shanghai City off guard, but their fear of Shanghai City had not decreased at all. Instead, they would be more vigilant against this fierce tiger. It was reported that the North Sichuan province had already started to establish a city-state, in order to more effectively fight against Shanghai City. It was precisely because of this that the coalition army wanted to immediately take down the two passes. As long as they held Xianwu Pass and Guiping Pass, Guilin County would be safe. On the contrary, if the two passes were lost, it would take twice the effort to defend Guilin County. On the morning of the 24th, the battle reports from the two passes were sent to the headquarters. Xianwu Pass was successfully taken, but Guiping Pass was held by Shanghai City. When the rulers received this news, they did not know how to feel. It was as if they had suddenly been stuck in midair, unable to go up or down, making them feel quite uncomfortable. The defeat at Guiping Pass made some lords tremble in fear. They were worried that when they woke up, the army of Shanghai City, they would fight to the death with them. Only one person remained calm. He was the city lord of Rosy Clouds City, south of Rosy Clouds, the governor's residence, West Courtyard. This courtyard was where south of the Rosy Clouds was staying. The courtyard was heavily guarded both inside and outside. In the main hall, south of Rosy Clouds sat in the middle. A middle-aged scholar sat below him. His face was fair and beardless, and he had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. That scholar was exactly the military counselor Li Mu mentioned. He was also a remarkable figure. This scholar was Li Li's Shan City. Zhang Liang, courtesy named Zifang, was an outstanding strategist in the late Qin and early Han dynasties. Together with Han Xin and Xiao He, they were known as the three heroes of the early Han dynasty. He was born in a noble family. His grandfather and father had been the prime minister of 5 generations in Yangdi, the capital of Han. Because Han was destroyed by Qin, Zhang Liang decided to rebel against Qin. He persuaded Liu Bang to make peace at the Hongmen banquet to preserve his strength. He also persuaded Xiang Yu's uncle, Uncle Xiang, to help Liu Bang escape. Later, he helped Liu Bang win the war between Chu and Han. He helped Empress Liu support Liu Ying to become the crown prince, and was conferred the title of Marquis Liu. Zhang Liang was proficient in the ways of Master Huang, and did not care about power. In his later years, he traveled with Qi Songzi. Liu Bang, the ancestor of the Han dynasty, commented on him, "A man can win a battle from 1,000 miles away. I am not as good as Zhang Yang." This showed Zhang Liang's wit and strategy. Later generations respected him for his outstanding strategy and called him the sage strategist. Because he was called the sage of strategists, Zhang Liang's rating was higher than that of Bai Qi, Han Xian, and Xiao He. He was a sage-level historical figure. The fact that South of Rosy Clouds was able to get Zhang Liang's help showed how extraordinary he was. Although there were many sage-level figures like Jiang Shang, Sun Wu, Meng Zi, and Mo Zi who settled down in Shanghai City, they were not officials in the real sense. They were different from Zhang Liang. South of Rosy Clouds was probably the first lord to get a sage-level figure to work for him. It had to be said that this person was very shrewd and had hidden himself very well. It was no wonder that he could stand out in the Battle of Jiulu and become the most dazzling dark horse. In fact, during the Battle of Jiulu, South of Rosy Clouds had already triggered Sage of Strategists Zhang Liang's mission. It was not until the end of the Battle of Jiulu that South of Rosy Clouds experienced many twists and turns in the wilderness and went through many difficult tests before he truly got Zhang Liang's favor. The hardships involved were not something that a lord like Ouyang Shua, who easily subdued historical figures, could understand. After all, whether it was on the battlefield or in the wilderness, as long as they were people that Ouyang Shua fancied, they would not have to go through many twists and turns. The only exception was probably Jiang Shang. This old man had made Ouyang Shua put in a lot of effort before he agreed to become the principal of Southwest University China Hall. Apart from him, there was also Fanli. It was unknown whether the Black Snake Guards had found Fanli or not. Zifeng, we did not successfully take down Guiping Pass this time. Do you have any plans to remedy this? It was because it was not easy to obtain that South of Rosy Clouds listened to Zhang Liang's words and trusted him unconditionally. Hearing this, Zhang Liang smiled and said, "Don't worry, my lord. It is not surprising that we did not take down Guiping Pass. It is still within my expectations. After all, our opponents are not ordinary people." So, Zifeng already has a plan? South of Rosy Clouds asked. Yes. It is not difficult to take down Guiping Pass. We only need to build another large pass at the entrance of Guilin County. This way we can also achieve our goal of defending against the enemy. Great plan. South of Rosy Clouds was overjoyed. But regarding Xianwu Pass, my lord, you must not let your guard down. Zhang Liang changed the topic. Xianwu Pass is not a dangerous place to begin with. If we can easily take it down, the army of Shanghai City will naturally be able to take it back. Therefore, the most important thing now is to strengthen the garrison at Xianwu Pass. That makes sense. I will arrange it in a moment. South of Rosy Clouds nodded and said, "The army responsible for sweeping through Guilin County has already completed their task. We can arrange for them to garrison at Xianwu Pass. Increasing the garrison is only a temporary solution. If we want to truly defend Xianwu Pass, we need to transform it into a sturdy fortress. Only then can we ensure that nothing goes wrong," Zhang Liang added. "Building two fortresses at the same time will probably cost a lot of money." Hearing this, South of Rosy Clouds revealed a troubled expression. It was obvious that she had something she could not say. Zhang Liang was very smart. Seeing this, his expression changed. He had already guessed the gist of it. He asked, "But do the other lords have any different ideas about the post-war plan for Guilin County?" According to Zhang Liang's plan before the war, the northern Sichuan province and Xiangnan city-state had joined hands to take down Guilin County while Shanghai City was unprepared. The main purpose was not to occupy territory, but to obtain a strategic buffer zone between Shanghai City and the two provinces. After all, for the lords of the two provinces, except for Rosy Cloud City, the other territories were still at the county level. For the time being, there was no problem of insufficient territory. Just within the provinces alone, there was enough territory for them to play around. Therefore, if it was just to occupy territory, there was really no need to make such a big fuss. Capturing Guilin County was the most fundamental consideration from a strategic point of view. After all, if Shanghai City successfully took down Guilin County, the territory of Shanghai City would directly border the two provinces. How could they allow others to sleep next to them? At the thought of such a ferocious tiger sleeping next to them, none of the lords of the two provinces dared to sleep in peace. It was precisely because of this that the war had occurred. If the Allied forces took down Guilin County, the situation would be completely different. If Shanghai City wanted to attack the two provinces in the north, they would not be able to pass through Guilin County. That way, the two provinces would have enough time to react and deal with the situation calmly. Apart from that, starting the war in Guilin County would also achieve the strategic goal of keeping the enemy outside of their territory, and the flames of war would not spread to the two provinces. This could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Therefore, before the war, the Allied forces had a clear plan for Guilin County after taking down Guilin County. That was to divide Guilin County as a whole into a common military area, and the revenue generated by Guilin County would all be used to support the Allied forces stationed in Guilin County. That way, they could not only support a large Allied force, but also not cause additional financial burden to the various territories. It was equivalent to spending other people's money to support their own army. It could be said that whether it was the layout before the war or the arrangements after the war, the whole set of plans was interlinked, and it was very operable and forward-looking. And the person who made this plan was the sage of strategists, Zhang Liang. It was this set of plans that moved the lords of Xiangnan City, and it also moved the lords of the North Sichuan province, represented by Lord Shiman. But what Zhang Liang did not expect was that when they really achieved the results of the war and picked the fruits of victory, in the face of huge benefits, some lords could not sit still. In other words, on this matter, the lords became selfish. In fact, before south of Rosy Clouds came to see Zhang Liang, they had already met with the other lords. The lords wanted to divide up the loot they had plundered in this battle, with each person getting a portion first. Because of this, south of Rosy Clouds found it difficult to build two strongholds at once. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.